Have the door shut.
Okay, here we go. Okay. Okay, we are live right now.
Okay.
Okay. Post this on Twitter too.
Come on.
Okay, here we go.
There.
Okay, hello everyone, how's everyone doing? Hope everyone's having a great Friday afternoon. Okay, here we go.
Oops, oh.
Hey, Pro.
Hi everyone. Okay, let me just go and start a bounty hunter mission.
Hey, Pro.
Yes?
So there's another mission in Hitman 3 Freelance called Showdowns. If you mess up or anything like that, you have to start the entire campaign all over again.
Well, I'll have a video on the Freelancer tomorrow.
Okay.
Hey, I'm April, Greatest Logan, Maxine, Transformer George, Dark Soul Charlie, Rashawn. Hey, I'm good, Rashawn.
What do you think of the freelance mode right now?
I haven't played it yet.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
I like this opinion.
Yeah, hey Pat, there was a 10-minute gameplay that got revealed for that game called
I know the day before.
Yesterday.
I might do a reaction to that, though. 10 p.m. watching you from Brazil. How you doing, the professional? Ask around there. There ought to be hundreds of us in your community. You're the best. Thank you, Kimbo, dude. Thanks, man. Hi, Pro, my new subscriber. Hello, LBM, LB Mac. How did you find my channel, if you mind me asking? No, I haven't, Spider. Yeah, I'm okay, Isaiah. No, I haven't, Chris. Hey, GB. Oh, I'm very disappointed in it. I had no idea about that. I saw Dark Space's video on it, Mr. Green. Am I gonna stream Hogwarts Legacy? Maybe, if I get around to it. I'm good, Jazzy. Okay. Get on over there then. And also, if everybody could use free aim here, I'm using just free aim also on this. What did you think of the Chinese spy balloon? Well, I put a tweet about it earlier.
Someone killed the target.
Yeah, I do not know who did that. I just noticed he died.
Honestly,
randomly.
I don't know.
I may have done it. Sorry.
I don't know what the government is doing.
I apologize if that was me.
I apologize if that was me as well.
Oh, my God, this guy. Okay, there we go. Okay, so what I was saying now about the Chinese spy balloon is, I don't really know what the U.S. government is like doing, why they haven't stopped it yet. You know, there is concern that there might, if they do shoot it down, there is concern that there might be debris. That's a valid, you know, thing to be concerned about. But you know, they should do their absolute best to stop it.
I wouldn't be so worried about debris. I'd be probably worried about what China's reaction is see it.
Well,
there's
China,
that,
China
so-
can't really have. Well, look, there's a first thing is the balloon is over Montana unless it goes into another state. So like Montana is like a very mountainous state, and it's a very large state. But being a very large state, it does not have that high of a population. So there's a huge chance that the balloon could fly over like an area where there's like nobody living in. So you know the government would have to take that into account. The other thing is China can't really complain if, like, you know, if the U.S. does decide, if the government does decide to shoot it down because it's an American airspace. And it's, you know, it's a spy balloon. So it's, you know, they have really nothing to say about that. Thank you, Terrence, for subscribing. Thanks, man.
I was gonna say the one quick thing that it was mentioned in a press conference that the balloon and the whatever is attached to the bottom of it is equivalent to size of about 2 school buses. So I
Yeah.
mean that is kind of a concern, but you just pick an area where there's nothing under it.
Yeah. Like I said, debris is like a concern. That it could fall on something, but you know, they gotta do their best to stop it as soon as possible. For people that don't know what I'm talking about, look up Chinese spy balloon in the US. It's a story going on right now.
Why can't I get my
Screw
horse
the stroke games, GTA, Saints Row, Yakuza. The jumping noodle is what everyone should be playing. Best ending game playing characters. Well, thank you, George. Thank you for the super chat. Thank you also,
Did you
Nick, for the
see-
super chat also.
I laughed
So
so hard at the turbo one.
And thank you, Seth, for sponsoring the channel. Thanks, man. What size TV would you recommend for a PS5? Well, I would recommend a TV that has a really good refresh rate. You know, you want, you know, the best gaming experience, but the size of the TV, the size of the TV is valid on the room that you're in. So it depends on the room that you're in, and also depends on how far you are from your TV. If you're in, like, you know, a small room, you know, you don't want like a 60-inch TV. I wouldn't say that, you know, so it depends. You know, my bed.
I'd like to. Sorry, go on.
My bedroom isn't, like, you know, that big of a room, and I have like a, what is it, a 50-inch, I think it is, in my bedroom. You know, my parents' house in, like, my parents' house in New York. I kind of lived in, like, the top floor, and the top floor is kind of like a, I don't know if I would call it an attic floor. There is an attic, but it's like, it's a very wide room, so you can imagine what it's like. And the room that I had, it's like a really wide room in my parents' house. I had an 80-inch TV in that one. But here, like, in my room, I have a 50-inch. So it really depends on the size of the room, like, really, and how close you are to the TV. Because people think that bigger TV means that it's better, not necessarily. The 80-inch TV that I had back in New York, that one is like from 2014, and it still, like, you know, works perfectly fine, and so I don't see a need to get rid of it. So that's just It seems you no longer enjoy YouTube. What? I don't know where you're getting that from.
I'd like to small interject on the previous one. There's currently in beta a update for the PlayStation 5 that introduces some more variable refresh rate features, and also Discord voice chat will be coming to console at some point. Because that's the current beta, and it might take a while, but at some point those features will probably be made standard, so all PS5s will have it at some point.
Thank you, Christopher Liu, for subscribing, and thank you, Sensei, for subscribing too. Okay, LB. What do I think about Amy and Sammy from Kitchen Nightmares? Psychos. But Amy and Sammy are basically the perfect example of narcissists. Like, very, very similar to narcissists. Well, not similar, they are narcissists, what I should say. But yeah, those are narcissists. And the thing is, though, here's the thing about it, is that literally, one thing that people don't understand about Amy and Sammy is that a lot of people are confused as to why Amy and Sammy are, like, they're both, like, if you look at it, both of them are extremely similar to each other. Like, Amy and Sammy are very, very similar to each other, very similar personality-wise. And people are probably wondering, how can like two, you know, such narcissists be like married? But it makes sense, because a narcissist can only really marry a narcissist, but it has to be a narcissist that agrees with their view specifically. So it's like, you know, a narcissist cannot be in a relationship with somebody that's like, that has even the smallest amounts of disagreement with them. That's why Amy and Sammy are a couple together. So it's like, you know, they're both, you know, but they're perfect examples of like, you know, the type of managers you don't want to have. I'm glad their restaurant closed down. They deserved it. They deserved their shutdown and everything like that. I remember when Amy fired her waitress because her waitress asked her if she's sure. That was just it. Like, that's like insane. Like that girl started crying. It's like, you know, that girl doesn't deserve to work there. Like, you know, that's just they're such scummy people. So it's just like, you know, she should just, you know, I hope she found a better job after that. But
Come on, I need to tell you something. Listen, ain't my business. Maybe. But, you know the docks near here, Quaker's Cove? Some gunman got someone over there all tied up, hollering and everything. Bet you could show those boys, right? Yeah? Okay then. This is gonna be a show.
So, but yeah, what I was saying about, like, Amy and Sammy is, also, their restaurant shut down, and Sammy, I think, got deported. I think he did. Because what happened was Sammy threatened a customer in the parking lot with a kitchen knife. So that's what, ended up happening to that couple. But yeah, they were very much, you know, narcissistic.
I was about to ask if he was the one that did the knife thing. Yeah, that's some insane... I don't know how you do that, but alright.
The thing about that is that... Here's the crazy thing about Amy and Sammy. And just hear me out on what I'm gonna say about them, guys. So we're talking about the Kitchen Nightmares couple. You know, Amy could have had a really successful restaurant. There was definitely possibility of that. But she could have had a very successful restaurant if she did one simple thing, and that was listen to Gordon. That's it. And like when literally Gordon went to that restaurant the first time, you know, everything was clean. Everything was organized, it was labeled, it was, you know, that part was good, you know, and their fridge was clean for the most part, where a lot of other restaurants you go to, their fridges are like very dirty, unorganized. They were actually organized. The problem with Amy and Sammy wasn't that they were dirty or you know, just, you know, some like, or bad at cooking necessarily. It was that they were just did not refuse to listen. Like any kind of criticism they saw as a personal attack. And that's what almost always happens. Narcissists see any form of criticism as like a personal attack on themselves. Even if that criticism is meant to be constructive and meant to try to help the narcissist improve, they always see it as an attack on themselves, or they'll try to blame somebody else. It's like they'll never take responsibility. They'll never admit to their, you know, they'll never admit to it. I used to work with a narcissist for many years, and it was not a good experience. But it's, you know, it wasn't, the person I worked with wasn't like psycho like Amy and Sammy, but, you know, I knew somebody, you know, that was just would never admit that they were wrong and would always constantly blame other people.
Because narcissists are the picture of perfection. How dare you criticize perfection?
Yeah. Hey, Pro, does a bug ever happen to you in Reddit Online where when you try to go into the gun customization stores where it won't load the page for it? I've had it lag on the catalog book before, but other than that, no. I haven't had more than that, Seth. Thank you for the super chat. I've watched Hell's Kitchen, yeah.
No one's perfect, so you're trying to do something that's basically impossible.
Well, that was the kind of the joke I was making about narcissists.
Yeah.
You know the
narcissistic abuse is one hell of an experience.
And the person saying Hell's Kitchen, I've watched only a few episodes of Hell's Kitchen. I haven't watched it. Kitchen Nightmares I've watched a lot. Hell's Kitchen I didn't watch a lot. But I did see the cook that I hated the most on Hell's Kitchen was Joseph. Like Joseph, I hated him the most. Like Joseph was a scumbag, and yeah, that was like I knew people like that, like Joseph, that would just like, you know, you would just ask them a simple question and they couldn't give you an answer, and then they would get all pissed off, and then they would just cause a scene. You know, I knew people like that had like very, very short tempers, and I can't stand people like that personally. That guy has no place being anywhere near like a kitchen if that's the type of attitude he's gonna give. So that was just Joseph, that guy, like, and the thing is though, is like when I was watching that whole Joseph thing the first time, I thought that was fake. Like, I was like, so there's no way that anybody can be this stupid on live TV. Like, I thought that was fake, and then I realized the whole thing was actually real at the end. So it was just like, I couldn't believe that somebody was that stupid though, but it turns out he was. So that was
What
just.
is with all these stupid wagons? I've hit at least 3 of them in this town.
Yeah,
those are called hotheads, is what they are.
Do you know what you know what happened like 2 years ago on this game? Speaking of the wagons,
What?
some of the people, people in the chat, let me know if you guys remember this. If anybody, I'm sure somebody remembers this. Do you guys remember two years? I think it was like 2 years ago, right? There was like a game-breaking bug on Red Dead Online. So Rockstar put like a patch into Red Dead Online. They were trying to fix something, and that patch they put in completely broke Red Dead Online. And Red Dead Online was broken for a few days before they fixed it. And basically what happened was Red Dead Online had no NPCs, none. Like, the strangers disappeared. There was nobody in the world, no animals, nothing. It was like a few days. It was like emptiness. Like, you would just ride around. There's nobody there. No hideouts, nothing. No animals, nothing. This was like for a few days in like 2020. So there wasn't even NPCs in towns. Like, you wouldn't see anybody to kill, any NPCs whatsoever. And the creepy thing about it is that you would see horses and wagons that would ride around with nobody on them. That was like, and it was just like Red Dead Online officially became a ghost town. But that's what it was like in 2020. Remember that there was like some patch they did, and they completely broke the game, and like all the NPCs disappeared. I have a video of it on my channel if you want to see it. Just look up like Red Dead Online NPCs disappear on my channel. There's like a video of it I made like a few years ago.
It's like Fallout 76 before the Wastelanders update.
Oh no, but Wastelanders was even, Fallout 76 before that was even better because at least you had something to kill in the world. But here you had nothing to do. It was like everybody was gone.
Yeah.
I remember for months at a time, on multiple occasions, actually not just once, that they broke the wildlife of Red Dead, that there was none. Like, you'd be lucky to see a squirrel.
If the spy balloon was a Russian one, do you think the US would have shot it down sooner? I don't know. I don't want to like make assumptions, but what I will say about it is that about the balloon, Mario, my personal prediction on it is I think the Chinese government did it on purpose. Like it wasn't just like an accident. I think they very much did it on purpose. And what I think is, I think they're trying to test U.S. response times. That's what I think. They're trying to see, like, if we send like a foreign object into like American airspace, like how will the Americans react? I think that's what the Chinese are trying to see. They're trying to see our response time, and they're trying to see exactly how we react. At least that's my theory on it personally. I don't have evidence for that, but that's just what I think personally about the whole thing. So I think they're just trying to see how we would respond to an intrusion in our airspace. But the thing about this is that, what I'll say is that the Chinese government, and I say Chinese government so much because I love the Chinese people and I love Chinese culture, but I cannot stand that, communist, government that just hate it so much. But it was, the Chinese government constantly threatens so many countries. They have border disputes with, like, they intrude on other countries' borders constantly. Like, there's so many countries where China has a border dispute. China even has a border dispute with North Korea, and North Korea is even one of their supposed allies. So literally, they have a border dispute with almost every single country that they border, and China constantly threatens other countries, and they make other countries apologize to them. And I wonder whether the Chinese government will apologize for this intrusion now. And like, the U.S. government should take a hardline stance and literally summon the Chinese ambassador, like, get him down, like, to a meeting, and just, like, demand answers, like, what's going on here exactly, and demand an apology. The U.S. government should demand an apology. That's like what I think, personally they should do about it. But, that's,
I imagine that if they do ask questions, they'll probably take the same policy as they do with, was it Taiwan? Yeah, I think Taiwan's what they do it for, that they pretend it doesn't exist. They say, what about this country? They'll not even respond.
Do you know what's so ridiculous? Is China violates so many other countries' airspaces. It's ridiculous. Like, they violate Vietnam's airspace. They violate the Philippines' airspace. They violate South Korean airspace, Taiwanese airspace. There's so many airspaces that they violate and so many border disputes. It's ridiculous. Like, they think that they can do whatever they want. Oh, and I forgot even Japanese airspace, too. So it's like, I guess deliver the target when there's 5 minutes left. We'll wait another minute, 30 seconds. But here's the thing is, guys, and this is what the media isn't telling you about this, is that China, for many years, what they've been doing is they've been building artificial islands in the Southeast Asian, the China Sea. And what they've been doing is they these artificial islands, when they build these artificial islands, they put airstrips on them and they build military bases on these islands. And what happens is when there's an island in the ocean, I think like the 100 miles or something outside of that island is considered the land of the country. 1 mile. Okay, so it's 1 mile. Okay, I overshot it by a lot then.
I'm gonna double check that right now, but I think it's 1 mile.
Okay, so according to international law, when there's like an island, there's like the ocean somewhat out of the island is considered the country's land also, a little bit of the ocean. And so what China does is they build these artificial islands and then they claim more and more land in the South China Sea. And so they keep doing that and they keep getting closer to other countries. They get closer to countries like Vietnam, they get closer to countries like the Philippines, they get closer to countries like Japan. And so these countries get very uncomfortable when China is like building islands constantly closer to them and building military bases, but you never really hear the media talking about that. But that's something that China has been doing for a very long time. And China wants to control that sea.
24 miles.
24 miles. Okay, so it's
That's
like...
what I'm seeing right now.
Okay, so it's 24 miles. So whenever China builds an island, 24 miles outside of that island, the water is all theirs. And it's an artificial island. And so they can build another artificial island, claim another 24 miles in the ocean, and they can just keep doing that and extending their borders. And, like, the international law should be updated, which says that if you build an artificial island, you have no claim on the waters outside of the island. That's what international law should be updated. The United Nations should change that, and that should, like, that will put a stop to it. But, you know, China knows what they're doing, and they're taking advantage of that situation, definitely. Let's see here. I'm gonna go to Coulter right now. I got a jacket on, might as well go to Coulter.
Okay, so I managed to save the video of that UFO now.
Coulter, here we go. I made it to 100% on GTA San Andreas, but I accidentally made a new save while I was getting another trophy. Now I'm so pissed. I got platinum at least. Oh, well, thank you, Dixie. Wasn't it autosave by any chance? Because I don't think you can turn off... Was it a definitive edition? Because I don't think you can turn off autosave on the definitive edition. Thank you, Dixie, for the super chat. You want to know what I got really pissed about? Do you know what I did? I accidentally deleted my Godfather 1 100% save. So remember when I played, like, Godfather 1, guys, and I did the whole playthrough, like, last year? And I literally, when I did the whole playthrough, I took out all the businesses. I did, oh, Fool's Gold. Do you guys want to do that?
Yeah. Sure.
Okay, I'm gonna go really quickly to the store and buy ammo, because I have no express ammo left.
Yeah, now that you said that, I should probably do the same.
But, so I accidentally deleted my Godfather 100% save. I took down all the warehouses, all the businesses, all the family compounds. I did all favors. The only thing I didn't do is the film reel collectibles. That was the only thing I didn't finish. But everything else I did. And so I accidentally deleted it. I was so pissed off. And do you know what actually happened? One of my friends in real life, he's the same one who actually helped me build my gaming computer. He's the same guy who I actually did the interview with on the PS5, like the liquid cooling thing. He's really good with computers. He actually helped me get my Godfather save back. So he actually found, like, he ran some program on my computer. We did it for TeamViewer, and he had retrieved my Godfather save, and he got my 100% save even after I deleted it. But I was so grateful for that because I worked so hard on that Godfather save, and for it to just be, you know, gone like that, that was, yeah. But very grateful.
Speaking of deleted saves, it's kind of like really old, but it's relevant and I thought interesting. The original PlayStation had kind of a feature like that built in, that should you delete a save, as long as you're quick about it and you don't leave the menu, you can reverse that. There was a way to undo it. It was like some sort of dev command that they left in. And when
I took computer forensics in college, I did one important thing that I remember from computer forensics that I still remember to this day, is that when you delete something on your computer, that thing that you delete is not completely gone until you overwrite the memory. So when you start saving something else or download something else, that's when it's officially gone at that point. When you delete it, technically it's still not gone. It's still technically be found. But once you, like, start downloading other stuff and fill up that same memory with something else, then at that point it's officially gone. But I'm gonna join Fool's Gold right now. Is everyone ready?
Yep. Yeah.
Yeah.
Would it be interesting for a commando type role to come to Hell Let Loose for Germany? I think they would have Storm Elite, like Medal of Honor Airborne. Well, what they could do in Hell Let Loose is they could add paratroopers. They could add that as a unit. They kind of have the airhead spawn, but I could see paratroopers being broken. I could see that happening. But if they add paratroopers, why don't they do it like a squad of just like 5 soldiers or something like that? It's not to make it broken. So like most of the soldiers are like on foot, and then you may have like a squad of 5 that can like spawn behind enemy lines and stuff like that. I think that would be like oh.
Speaking of Medal of Honor Airborne, I actually played a lot of the multiplayer a lot back in the day.
Oh, I never played the multiplayer much, but I did play a single player, and I remember it a lot. Hi, Pro. Great job, Medal of Honor Rising Sun playthrough. My brother and I are really enjoying it so far. Happy Friday and take care always. Thank you, Afina. The next part of it will actually be uploaded after the stream, so check it out tonight if you still have time.
What now?
I just found out that Mussolini actually served in the Royal Italian Army, and he was a sharpshooter, held the rank of corporal. Well, the thing about, yeah, Mussolini did serve in the Italian Army during World War I, and Mussolini was actually originally a member of the Socialist Party, and what happened was he got thrown out of the Socialist Party because of the fact that he had supported the World War I, where the Socialist Party was strictly anti-war. But it was, yeah, that was the background of Mussolini there. Great. Already got headshotted here, but I will, let me just, I gotta change the auto aim again here. I enjoy your lore videos and also playing Red Dead Online. Thank you, Red Bat, thanks, man. No, I haven't played Horizon Zero Dawn.
I just have to put auto aim back on now, too.
There's kind of a sequel coming out for that, sort of. I don't know if it's a sequel or prequel, or maybe it happens at the same time. But the VR is coming out at the end of this month, including a game set in that world.
Grab the,
Still playing.
regroup. Once you grab the armor, regroup with your allies. Just so, yeah.
Alright, going over there. One down.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Armor dudes pulling up. Find us.
Well, I definitely hurt him really badly. Okay, was he taken down, the guy with the armor?
Yep, he's still kicking.
No, he's still alive. I don't.
He's dead now.
I'm grabbing it.
I'm gunning for it. Got it.
There we are.
We got guys on the flank.
Look, guys, I'm using the gun that nobody uses, the Litchfield.
Come and get it.
Yeah, I got it.
Got him. Find us.
Okay, this is stupid right now. That was
Fine.
3 shots to the chest and the guy was still going.
They're on the cliffs or something.
Make sure you guys let the guy with the armor get some kills just so we can get in,
Something to stop them.
Yeah, that's me. Alright, 2.
Got one.
Watch out behind you,
Oh.
Tommy.
Yep,
oh, come
they're
on.
coming for me.
Use explosive on me. Explosive ammo.
Ah, damn. That guy used explosive ammo on you?
Damn it!
Yeah, that's how
The
you
guy
do
who
it.
the armor?
Yeah, the one that killed me and grabbed the armor, yeah.
He wants to use explosive rounds, I'll use it back on him. Oh.
Got it.
I'm just beating this guy up. Ah, they got me. I just beat the shit out of some guy.
I hate when the game spawns me up on these like cliffs.
You guys have vantage points on.
Ah. Okay.
And that was a waste of a shot, and I just got shot in the head.
Yeah, there we go. Oh no!
Yeah, that guy got the armor.
I killed the guy that had the armor, but now... Oh no, 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 no.
Someone else has the armor now.
Hope you die, I hope you die.
Yeah. What I hate about this mode is that you can't change your weapons once you bring in what you have.
Got it.
Oh, we killed
Somebody
each other.
grab the armor if you can.
I got the arbor. Hopefully I don't get explosive ammo again.
Yep, I'm coming up there right now.
There we are. I'm gonna stick close to you guys, alright?
Burn, you prick.
Yeah, I'm trying to stay close to her. Yeah.
I'm trying to get over there. I got a good vantage point right now.
Express, okay.
Oh shit.
Oh! Yeah,
Yep.
Somebody pick it up, please.
oh, Pat's near it.
I got
There
it.
he is.
Got one. That's one of you guys, that was one of the enemies. I guess we just secure the hill then. Nice shot.
Indeed.
Revenge.
Crosshair will be proud.
Litchfield isn't a bad rifle if you know what to yeah. Okay.
I don't know how I got this, but I got it.
Okay.
Fuck. Got him. And I got shot in the head.
Got him. Okay.
Two.
Okay. They're doing good.
Yep.
Let me get this
They've
kill
got 9,
here.
we've got 4. Ah, he got me right before I could take the second shot. Good kill.
Oops.
Got him.
You kidding me? 6 shots from Evans. I think he's dead. But
Hey, Melons, look who's
For people wondering why I'm waiting for a second, if you study the shot, you can hit him very accurately. And the class, for people wondering how I'm killing people so fast with the Litchfield without going for headshots, I'll show you the class that I'm using after the match. But yeah, should be killing people with body shots, not even going for headshots.
Nice kill.
Oh, I just need one more kill.
3 seconds.
Oh, almost had it. Yeah, it's close.
$12.
$13.
I killed a lot of people. I mean, I killed
Oh, you got
14
second
people.
place, Tom. Not bad.
Good job.
Yeah, congratulations,
Yeah.
Germany would be Jaegers, maybe also have the ability to get in a... I think that they, I think they already have the Jaegers in Hell Let Loose, though. I think they already are in there. You're the best guy. You're the best. Your guys are the best also. Thank you, Matt. And thank you, JD. Thank you, George. Currently playing GTA San Andreas Definitive Edition, going for the Platinum 100% so far. Haven't encountered other problems. I'm gonna eventually do a 100% stream on San Andreas, and I'm also doing a lore video on San Andreas. I don't want to spoil what the lore video is going to be about. It's going to be a character analysis on an important character. And it's going to be showing something that people haven't noticed, like in the story in San Andreas. Something people haven't noticed. Guns that people don't use. Double action, Litchfield. It sometimes practices enough they can be very good guns. Yeah. So was anybody surprised that I was killing people for Litchfield? Like, it was like, yeah, that was just, like, I used almost always the Litchfield the whole game. And it was just, yeah, that's like the gun almost no one uses. Hey, Pearl, how's your Friday going? It's going good, Krillin. Thank you for the super chat. And thank you, Matt. Thanks, man. Do I think that Hitler was scared of Franklin Delano Roosevelt when America joined World War II? No. Because Hitler actually declared war on America before America declared war on Germany. And so Hitler got extremely overconfident, and he thought that he could just, because at the time when Hitler declared war on America, like, Germany was, like, literally a few miles outside of Moscow at that time. So they were about to take Moscow. Like, the whole world thought that the Soviet Union was about to fall apart. So it was just, so he got extremely overconfident, and he thought he thought he could win everything. But it was his downfall too, and it's and we should also be happy that he was as stupid as he was, because it made winning the war a lot easier, because the world would be a very bad place today if he won.
Ow.
Okay.
Yeah, I guarantee you, if Hitler won the war and stuff, we probably would have to like have a picture of Hitler in our house, and we would have to, like, every time we wake up in the morning, we'll have to salute him. Yeah.
Well, if Hitler had won the war, there's a lot of countries today that would be speaking German. They wouldn't be speaking their languages.
I knew that guy
Richard,
was gonna kill someone. I had a feeling. Dude's jumping us.
We better get out of here.
Let's get away from him. Let's just get away from him. I'm gonna teleport everyone to my moonshine.
Yeah, watch out.
This guy's explosive arrows.
That guy's...
Yeah. If Germany won World War II, would they have betrayed Italy? Yes. Yes, Germany would have taken Italy over, definitely. And the Germans didn't like the Italians. That's what a lot of people don't know, that is that the Germans and the Italians were allies, but they didn't like each other. They didn't. They were both fascist governments, but they didn't like each other. If you play Sniper Elite 3, and Sniper Elite 3, it's the North African theater, and you fight a lot of Italian soldiers in that game. And in Sniper Elite 3, there's one part that's kind of historically accurate. When you're going into Fort Refugio, you notice that the Germans soldiers are actually sleeping inside the fort, the warm fort. And the Italian soldiers are all in tents outside the fort, cold. And so something like that is completely believable. That it was that the Germans always treated the Italians very poorly. And it was that when Italy actually switched sides in 1943, the Germans captured like thousands of Italian prisoners of war, and they massacred a lot of them. Like, they just murdered a lot of them. Why? Because they're evil.
I don't know if I was on mute the entire time.
Germany never cared about Italy. They never considered the Italians allies to them. They were they were only allies for, help each other militarily. That's what it was about. That was,
Should we go
Hey,
into
bro,
a
can you
private
try doing a
session,
Let's
bro?
Play on Bully? Yeah, I could do that one day.
Okay, I got booted out of the session due to network error, but I'm rejoining.
If you do a playthrough bully pack,
Same
you
with
probably
Spain,
won't be
yeah.
hearing.
Hitler actually despised Franco. So Spain was another fascist country, and Hitler really didn't like Franco, and Franco didn't like him back too. One of the reason that Spain and Germany had like a falling out, the reason that Spain never became like a member of the Axis, was because two reasons. The first one is that Germany constantly kept demanding Spain to enter the war on their side, and Franco didn't want to do that because he was saying that they had just finished their civil war and that they weren't ready militarily. And the second reason that the Spanish didn't like the Nazis was because the difference between Spanish fascism and German fascism was a bit different, where Spanish fascism revolved around the Catholic Church. That's what it was. Spanish fascism was very religious. That was Veganism, if I'm saying it correctly. That was the name of the Spanish version of fascism. It was very much religious fascism. That's what it was. It was very close ties to the Catholic Church. German fascism had no ties to religion. It had no ties to the church. German fascism was driven by race. It was driven by like their obsession with the Aryan race and all of that stuff. And so the Nazis had actually discriminated heavily against the Catholic Church. They murdered a lot of priests. They shut down a lot of churches, and so that upset the Spanish fascists. They didn't like the Nazis' discrimination of the Catholic Church, so that's one of the reasons that Spain and Germany had like a falling out because of that.
Can someone invite him back to the posse?
Who is it, Richard?
Yeah, me.
Oh
I
crap.
got kicked out of session to repair.
Well, I guess we're gonna have to finish this bounty first before you rip.
Oh, okay, that's
Yeah.
Okay,
That's
let's
fine.
get this guy here.
that's fine.
Okay.
Hey, bro. Did you know
No.
about MrBeast healing 10,000 people from blindness or something
1,000.
with surgeries?
Yeah, no, I don't.
That's fantastic.
The only thing I
Oh,
know
did
about
he
it
do
is
more?
he helped organize some charity, which it was to help people like deal with blindness, like, and it was help people get surgery so they could see again. And some people were getting upset about that. Like, I don't know why. Like it was just like some people were causing a scene over it and getting upset over it. But you know, it's internet. You have dumb people that'll get upset over anything. Germany was pretty much a
1,000.
raider nation because you said they mostly got their supplies from looting from countries they occupied. Yeah. So here's the thing: is that there's a lot of people don't understand how a country like Germany had so much money for weapons. Like Germany had like probably the most advanced army in Europe at the time. You know, they had very advanced weapons. And, you know, they ended up developing things like the V2 rocket, the first jet fighter, the first assault rifle. Their tanks were also very advanced. And so people don't understand, how did Germany, one of the poorest countries, because Germany, 10 years before World War I, Germany was, World War II, 10 years before World War II, Germany was falling apart during the Depression. Like, it was just a poor country. It was completely falling apart. So how did a country like Germany manage to build up such a powerful military in that short? The reason? They stole so much stuff. Because the thing is, though, is that the Nazis, what they would do is anybody that they didn't like, they would have arrested and killed, and they would take all their property, and they would sell it off. And so the Nazis had confiscated so many Jewish people's properties during before World War II even happened. They were confiscating Jewish people's property. They were taking stuff from people, and they were targeting a lot of groups. And so when they invaded countries, they were looting those countries. They would just steal art, they would steal gold, and they would just sell it off. And that's how they funded their war machine. Their whole war machine was just funded on just stealing from other countries. They would just steal from other countries, they would rob people, they would kill people, and they would take stuff from them. And that's how they funded all of that stuff, this is the looting. And to this day, a lot of the Nazi gold has still never been found.
That's insane.
Do you think FDR is an American hero? You mean Franklin Delano Roosevelt? FDR, I think, deserves credit for helping to pull America out of the Depression. He definitely did some good things to help pull the country out of the Depression. Like, I'm typically more of a free market guy, but at that time, the government needed to get involved in the economy. And so generally, I think Roosevelt did a good job when it came to the economy. World War II, yeah, he did a good job. You know, he got us through the war. He didn't live to see the end of the war. But one of the worst things that Roosevelt actually did was the Japanese internment camps, which a lot of people forget about that. And I actually talked the part that I'm actually uploading another part of Medal of Honor Rising Sun right now, and so you guys will be able to see it right after the stream. And there's a Japanese American that actually helps you in one of the parts. And I was actually talking about the Japanese internment camps in my next part of Rising Sun. If you guys want to watch that, I do read history a lot, but it's that was one of the worst things Roosevelt did. And what actually happened was the Japanese Americans ended up suing the U.S. government after the war, and they lost. And then decades later, it was actually the U.S. government admitted that it was wrong, and they gave any survivors some compensation for it. But the whole Japanese internment thing was just ridiculous, and it was racist at its core, because by by that same logic, if they're gonna intern Japanese Americans because they think they could be potential spies, why didn't they also intern Italian and German Americans? They didn't. They were just interning Japanese Americans. The whole thing was just rooted in racism.
There's a part in the Medal of Honor Rising Sun where there's a helicopter that shows up.
Is that on the bridge on the River Kwai?
I think so. I forget. It's been such a long time, but I do know that during that part, one of the guys was like, "What the hell is that?" That's what they're like when they saw the helicopter, since helicopters didn't really exist back in World War II.
Helicopters did technically exist during World War II, technically, but they were prototypes. That's what they were. They weren't they weren't in service really. So that was just
No way. I thought the helicopter shows up.
One moment, hang on.
Yeah, what I was gonna say was is that helicopters were very rare at the time.
The people complaining about MrBeast are usually Marxists who can't stand the fact that they're nowhere near as successful as he is. Oh, well, thank you, Mario, for the super chat. And here's the thing, is guys, is MrBeast, sure, he makes a living on YouTube, but he makes a living helping people. You know, his videos are largely positive. You know, I don't watch the guy, but I'm not a fan of him. Like, I'm not saying I'm not a fan of him that I don't like him. I just don't watch him. That's why I'm not a fan. But I don't hate the guy. I think he's generally a good person. He helps people out, and you know, he helps people out with charities, and you know, he helped people get homes. He helped cure blindness. He's done a lot of charity work on his channel. And you know, I try to do as much charity work as I can myself. I link like you know, charity. If you watch like my videos, you'll see I link charities to the videos all the time, and I do charity streams 2 times a year. But you know, he does, you know, the most I've ever seen of any YouTuber ever. Like he's donated millions and millions and millions of dollars to like helping people out. Like he's just done a lot. So it's I don't know why anybody, you know, how anybody could hate him.
That's the thing I always wanted to get into, actually, charity stuff.
Hey,
I thought about volunteering myself.
So they were pretty much an army-sized raider nation. The Empire of the Rising Sun Japan are definitely raiders because they're all 3 policies. Well, thank you, JD. Thank you for the super chat. Okay, when we're at 11 minutes, let's deliver.
What was that, Balance?
We're sitting ducks right here. Any griefer can show up.
He doesn't advocate for the political change that helped these people. That's why he's criticized. What do you mean he doesn't advocate for the political change? I don't know what you mean by that. I don't watch his videos, so I generally don't know what you mean by that. But look, here's the thing is, if he is helping people with charities, but he's staying out of politics, I think that's generally a good thing. Because why should a YouTuber get political? Because the moment that he gets political, he definitely has some political views, everyone does. But the moment that he gets political, he's gonna lose half his audience. Because generally half people view one thing one way and half people view things the other way. He's generally, you know, the fact that he's not getting into politics, I think that's a good thing. And he's getting more people together and helping everybody from, you know, both sides politically get together and help people. So I think that's generally a good thing then. So if he doesn't get involved in politics, I think that's a good thing then. So it's and also there's a huge debate on what will help people politically. So I'm not taking a side on that either. But like one person will say, oh, this is how we help people politically. Another person will say, this is how we help people politically. Another person. But both people, regardless of their politics, can agree that helping to cure blindness is a good thing, regardless about how you feel about how to deal with homelessness or things like that. Everybody will agree that, you know, that helping cure blindness is a good thing, no matter what your politics are. So that's, you know, so him staying out of politics, I think that would be a good thing. And the fact that people would want him to get into politics, I think that's a bad idea, and that's stupid. There's people who have wanted me to get into politics. You know, I don't do it. Sometimes I'll like comment on certain things, what I think. Like, you know, I largely try to stay out of it. But this is not a political channel. This is a gaming channel, and that's largely keep it that way. And so that's like, you know, the moment any YouTuber gets political, like, you know, they lose like, you know, half their audience. You know, that happens. So it's like, you know, we want to keep people together, not divide people.
What do you say there, George?
Yeah, speaking on blindness, I was watching Shadiversity recently. It's one of his older videos, and you know those like sort of Renaissance fair type events, whatever, This was more medieval focused an event, and there were some people there with some expertise, and he was talking to one that was pretty well knowledged on medieval medicine. So, treating cataracts back in the day, they didn't really understand what cataracts are, but they did figure out that if you took like a nail, a nice sharp one, and because the eye has a lens over it, and if you just only poke at the lens and you push it out of the way, so that's where the cataract is, that's blocking your vision, and you just like rotate it around, so now it's like away from your iris and pupil, you get to see again. You can't focus on anything. It's like you're permanently blurry and hard to see things, but you can see instead of being just blind. So that was something they did way back.
Oh, there's bots in my PS5 controller video. Okay, I'll take a look in a little bit, Isaiah.
Oh man.
They don't go away, do they? But Pro, did you know in the Fallout lore, there's actually Chinese internment camps because of them raiding Alaska.
Oh, they did. They had Chinese internment camps in the Fallout world. Well, I didn't know about that.
Yeah, I'll have to send you a
that was
video,
that was definitely then like the Fallout storyline, and that was definitely like I was saying that was they got that from the Japanese internment camps during World War II.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's like bad part of like American history that you don't really hear much about, like with the Japanese internment camps during World War II. Like imagine being like an American citizen and you're loyal to your country, and then all of a sudden like the country that your parents come from declares war on your country, and now you're seen as like a traitor or a possible spy even though you were born in this country. So that's how messed up the Japanese internment camps were.
Yeah, I think there's a few books on that. Goodbye from Manzanar is one of them that talks about the experience of the Japanese internment camp.
Hey Pro, I just wanted to say that I've been upset recently, but you as a person, as a creator, I enjoy your videos, mostly your streams, but you do make me happy. I want to keep supporting you, but it's been hard recently. Well, thank you, It's Ant. I really appreciate the support, and I appreciate the donation. $20 super chat from you was the largest donation on the stream today. Thank you, man. I really appreciate it. But also, it's don't feel like you have to donate to me to keep supporting me, though. I do appreciate that. I always appreciate any donation that people give to me. You said it's been hard recently, so I appreciate any support. I appreciate the donation a lot. But if you cannot donate, don't feel like you need to donate to support me. Don't feel like you need to. I will never ask for donations. If anybody the donations are optional on my channel. If anybody gives me a donation, I always greatly appreciate it. And I value that a lot. But don't feel like you have to give me a donation to support me. If you watch my videos and generally give me a like on my videos, that's also plenty of support. So that's so yeah, I will never ask for donations or anything like that, and I can't stand scumbag YouTubers that ask for donations. But watching ads on when people watch videos and then the ad comes up, they're supporting the channel. They're helping. They're helping because ad revenue comes up. So there's things like that. Generally watching videos. That and watching the YouTuber video helps them out too. But yeah, I appreciate the support, and thank you for the thank you for the super chat, man. That vegan teacher says that he is a bad person because he isn't vegan. You'll be surprised. You can make enemies just by living. Wait, what? That vegan teacher says that who's a bad person? Wait, what, George? That says that somebody's a bad person because they aren't a vegan. Look. Here's what I'll say about this is one of my friends in real life is a vegetarian. And what I would say about that is that my friend has never once criticized me eating meat. Never once. He won't eat meat, but has never once criticized me eating meat, and I have never once criticized him being a vegetarian. Not once. And so that's generally that if people are like that, I have absolutely no issue with that, and I respect what people want to eat. the moment that I have an issue with it is when somebody will do exactly that. When somebody will say, "Oh, because you eat meat, you're a bad person," or something like that. That's the moment that I have a problem with it at that point. But if somebody's just like a vegetarian because they don't want to eat meat, I can respect that. That's fine with me. The problem I have is when people try to push it on other people, and when they try to make assumptions that somebody's a bad person because they eat meat. That's the thing that I don't like, and that I have a problem with personally. Yeah, and when I see parents like raising their kids to be vegetarians and vegans, I think that's wrong. I think that's bad. I think that the child should have the decision on if they want to eat meat or not. I don't think that the parent should be able to just dictate to their kids like that. Like, I know that you can't give the child everything that they want always, but like, you know, if the child wants to eat meat occasionally, they should have the right to eat meat. Parents shouldn't you know, take that option away from them and should force vegetarianism on them.
So that vegan teacher is a YouTuber. They criticize everything.
Audio is terrible. Oh wait, is my audio good or not? What's the difference between a vegetarian and a vegan? A vegetarian is somebody that won't eat meat. I think I'm not sure whether a vegetarian will eat fish or not. I don't think they will either. But they won't eat meat. A vegan, on the other hand, is somebody that will not eat meat, fish, and they won't even drink milk. I don't think they'll eat chocolate also because it's made from milk. So that's and they won't drink cheese. They won't eat cheese also. So that's what I think. Anything that involves like any kind of animal fat or anything like that, any kind of food like that, even if it's not meat, they won't eat. So that's
That vegan teacher is just an old lady.
An old Karen, maybe.
What do you think of?
Yes.
What do you think of the plant-based burgers?
Plant-based burgers?
Yeah.
I haven't had
Like
I haven't had a plant-based burger, but I've had plant-based sausage. So I literally I went to my supermarket like it was a few months ago. I had a coupon for like a plant-based sausage. I bought it. I cooked it. It was disgusting. I didn't like it. It was terrible. It was the worst sausage that I've ever eaten. It was just disgusting. So it's like I'm open to eating plant-based foods, but it's like I'm not gonna. I've had plant-based chicken nuggets, which I don't know like how there's chicken nuggets and they're plant-based, but those were good. Those tasted fine to me. The plant-based sausage was disgusting. I didn't like that. So that's just
Yeah, I've had a plant-based burger. It's actually not bad.
I just got a friend request from some guy. I'm very suspicious of it.
Hold on, was it someone said they start with an S or someone with an S earlier?
Am I bilingual? I speak Polish also.
Yeah, I sent you something.
Yeah.
Yeah, I sent it to you earlier.
See here. I'm just trying to scroll up. I've missed a bunch of comments.
Do you want me to find them real quick? Cause I have your.
No,
stream pulled up.
I'm just looking through here.
Okay. Come on, damn it.
Well, what did you say, ZD? I think the moderator timed you out, but did you say something bad in your super chat? The same people criticizing MrBeast are the same people who would like praise Jeff Bezos. Yeah, so like here's what I'll tell you is about this is like in regard I definitely agree with that. Like, you know, these people pick and choose a lot of stuff, but it's what I will say, like, you know, for example, like with Elon Musk, like, you know, when Elon Musk bought Twitter, do you know what my reaction was? I didn't care, and I still don't care. That was literally what my reaction was. I honestly didn't think Twitter could get any worse with him, so I didn't care, and I still don't care. I don't have a negative view of him. I don't have a positive view of him. I'm just like, I don't care. Generally, that's just like my view on it. However, though, with Elon Musk buying Twitter, you were able to see like the massive hypocrisy of like a lot of people, because people were getting so upset that this guy had like bought Twitter. But like this, like when because like I'll tell you something, when I see like the media, and I guess let's put him on my horse, Jess, and I'll take him to the prison wagon here.
Okay.
But like, okay, for example, like when I seen the media, and the media was like saying, oh, it's dangerous for like one guy to like control like, you know, Twitter or social media like one billionaire. I'm like thinking to myself generally like, what rock have you been under? Do you have any idea how many billionaires already control like the media and stuff like that? Look at Mark Zuckerberg. You know, why aren't they the same people who criticize Elon Musk for owning Twitter? Why are they not criticizing Mark Zuckerberg? Why are they not criticizing Jeff Bezos? Jeff Bezos owns the Washington Post. He's a billionaire that bought one of the largest newspapers in the country. You know, Mark Zuckerberg owns Facebook. So, like, why aren't these billionaires, if we're gonna criticize one guy for owning Twitter, why aren't we criticizing Mark Zuckerberg or Jeff Bezos? They're not, and do you know why? It's because the way that I see it personally is the media, the mainstream media, the way that they look at this is they don't have a problem with a billionaire owning Twitter. They don't have a problem with a billionaire owning Facebook. They don't have a problem with a billionaire owning a Washington Post. They're fine with billionaires owning the media. They're fine with that. Do you know what the difference is? The difference is a billionaire who they don't like bought Twitter. That's the difference. So they're fine with billionaires. The only difference is it's a billionaire they don't like that happened to buy Twitter. And that's what the whole thing was about. If they truly believed that they don't want billionaires owning stuff, they would have been criticizing Mark Zuckerberg and Jeff Bezos a long time ago, but they haven't. Like, where have these people been living under a rock all of a sudden? Now, it's just that when Elon buys Twitter, where were you with Mark Zuckerberg and Facebook? Where were you with Jeff Bezos and the Washington Post? So that's just it. I'm not a fan of billionaires owning things. I don't advocate for it. But, you know, I just see the hypocrisy in this personally, and it irritates me and pisses me off when I see stuff like that. It's just,
This one give you much trouble? Looks like a little pussycat. Done deal.
Thank you, Michael, for the super chat. And thank you, Bunny. Next time you go to Burger King, try out the Impossible Whopper. Also, nice 15 months. Thank you, Bunny. That's a sandwich, the Impossible Whopper? Well, I'd have to look into that.
I thought they canceled that.
Thank you for sponsoring my channel for 1.5 years, Bunny. Thanks, man. That vegan teacher also went after Gordon Ramsay, MrBeast, and many other YouTubers. Well, I guess I'm a terrible person for eating meat. Well... Yeah, like, I'll tell you, anybody that's gonna go after, like, you know, anybody that's gonna go after somebody, what, because they eat differently than you, that's just stupid. Thomas Rivera, okay, we'll go for him, then. Oh, you know, the 171 videos are privated now, at least until the developer is a little bit more transparent. Because I had no idea about like their, that they had reused like, you know, stuff for their game, reused features. But I saw my friend Darkspace made a video about that the other day. Love how honest you are in your GTA content. Thank you, Jordan. What are your thoughts on Augusto Pinochet? Oh, that guy was a scumbag. Yeah, that guy was a really bad guy. He terrorized he terrorized Chile for a long time. And his secret police killed a lot of people. So yeah, Pinochet was not a good man at all.
But it's not letting me send the video to you on the PlayStation app.
What is it?
The UFO video. It's being a pain right now.
Oh, that's
starting to annoy me.
Get out of here now, damn you!
Cause damage in the area to lure the target out. Okay, I'll get my sniper rifle out here. Love the channel. Enjoy the stream. You're the best. Thank you, Matt. Thanks for the
No.
Oh.
I'm playing on PS4, you know, Red Dead Online, but on the PS5. You know what I really wish? I really wish we could have a rolling block of iron sights. Like, I really would wish we could have that. But we're never gonna have that because Rockstar abandoned this game.
Yeah.
What do you think? What do you think a Carcano rifle would have been like with iron sights?
Oh, I fired a Carcano rifle before. It's the Carcano rifle doesn't have the little ring sights. It has the little like tip sight on it.
Yeah.
There, speaking on Red Dead though, there is a glitch. It only works within the legendary bounty sessions. So during one of those missions, you can do a glitch to remove the scope from all the sniper rifles. The Carcano, the rolling block.
Yes, there is.
and-
There's a
Yep.
there is a bit of a controversy of 171 right now.
But after the mission though, it goes back to the scope. I've tried to have it stay as iron sights because it's fun to play those rifles that way, but it won't.
What's making this controversy happen, anyways? With 171?
Is that the people that make Halo?
Nope.
No, it's the
343.
Brazilian GTA thing, right? Or well, they're trying to compete with GTA.
Oh. That's that Brazilian.
think it's that.
Yeah, the Brazilian GTA style game.
Oh, okay.
What do you think about the Shah of Iran? You know, not a good man. Also, you know, I'm not a fan of monarchy. I just generally don't like it. But, you know, what I will say is that Iran, in my opinion, during the Shah times, was a lot better than it is now. Like, when the Iranian Revolution happened, and it was just... Basically, the Iranian Revolution was just religious extremism. That's pretty much what it was. Religion dominates the government in Iran now. And, you know, Iran is just a much worse place than it was, like, you know, decades ago. Like, you know, before the revolution, it wasn't a perfect place. Sure, it had its problems. But it was a much better place before the revolution than it is now. Like, you know, today it's like a religious extremist government. You can't even, you know, you can't even have a reasonable discussion with that government. It's a psycho government. So it's just, and it causes so many problems. No, yeah, it was before, like, religion, like, you know, started getting mixed in the government. It was, you know, it wasn't, you know, that, you know, it wasn't that bad of a place to live, but it's just, yeah. It's a shame because Persia was, like, historically one of the, you know, cultural centers of the world. And that revolution just knocked them back so far. It did so much harm to their country.
Good Lord. All done but the burying, huh? In there. This is yours.
You should be a waste management consultant and eat gabagool while talking to a therapist about your problems and hiring a cop to follow her around. You're making fun of the Sopranos. Oh. The therapy sessions in GTA 5 were actually based on the Sopranos. Thank you, Edgy.
I've seen that on HBO Max. Is that show good to watch?
Yeah, the Sopranos is good to watch. The thing is, the first season is a bit ridiculous, but then the show gets more realistic later on.
Oh, okay.
Well, I'm a head out. Good night, everyone. I'm going to be keep on watching Game of Thrones. Be safe, everyone. Thank you, George. I'll see you. Take care, man. If I wanted to play with you in Hell Let Loose or other shooter games, I am more better at being infantry or bait if you need me to draw fire away. Thank you, JD. Thank you for the super chat. But the thing about that is that you know, Hell Let Loose, you can do some really good work in that game if you play as a team. If you play as a team and you work together, you can really do some good work in that game. But like, you know, whenever I play, you know, Hell Let Loose, you know, typically my favorite class to play as is the sniper or the spotter. I'll play as either one. But I like that because the sniper and the spotter have to work together. And so, like, you know, I'm fine with playing the spotter. A lot of people don't like playing the spotter because they think it's boring, but I'm fine with playing the spotter. But it's, the thing, what a lot of people don't understand is the spotter is the commanding officer. So the spotter is actually in charge of the sniper, and they're commanding officer. And so the sniper is supposed to listen to the spotter. When the spotter says, let's set up here, you're supposed to set up here. When the spotter says, fire at targets out there, sniper is supposed to listen to him and fire at targets out there. And the spotter in return has a submachine gun. It's meant to keep the sniper protected at close range. Sniper is meant to protect the spotter at long range. But what happened is when I play Hell Let Loose so many times, I play as a spotter. I have a sniper that joins my squad, and the only reason he joins my squad is because he just wants to snipe, and he doesn't want to actually help or do anything like that. He thinks it's like Call of Duty. And I try to talk to these people. And I try to, tell them, hey, this is where we're going to set up or what we're going to do. I have snipers who don't listen to me. Don't listen to me whatsoever. And they run off, they do their own thing, they die a bunch of times, it just gets annoying. And I've had to kick snipers out of my squad. If somebody's not listening to me, not listening to my orders, like, I'm a very patient person. Like, whenever I join a squad and there's a commanding officer, I always listen to the commanding officer when I play Hell Let Loose. But if I'm the commanding officer and somebody's not listening to me when I'm playing that game, it's like I'm typically patient. I'll typically, try to reason with them. But, if they're not listening to me, I'll kick them after some time. I'll kick them out of the squad. And I think that's generally a good thing that the commanding officer can kick the sniper out of the squad. And I've done that a lot of times. I kicked bad snipers out of my squad. And I had this one guy, like, one time I kicked him out of my squad because he wasn't listening to me. And what he did was he became like a squad leader just so he could go into officer chat. And he started yelling at me in officer chat on Hell Let Loose. And he started saying, like, oh, screw you, professional, because that was actually my game in Hell Let Loose. My name is a professional Hell Let Loose. He's like, you kicked me out of the squad. And literally, this guy was not saying anything to me. Like, he was just completely silent. I was just saying the entire time, like, hey, let's set up here. Let's go here. Spawn on me. I put a spawning beacon down. Nothing. Doesn't listen to me whatsoever. Nothing. No response. But the moment I kick him out of the squad, that's the moment he turns on his mic and starts cursing me out and everything like that. And the commanding officers in the match were largely on my side. So they were yelling at him back. But it was like, the guy was just not listening to me. And then when he didn't have his way, he started team killing. So that was like, and I was like, wow, this is definitely a Call of Duty player at this point. So that's like, that's the thing. But I've had some really stupid, like, and to be fair, I've had some really stupid commanding officers when I play Hell Let Loose. Like, I've seen some really dumb people in that game. And I gotta make some videos on Hell Let Loose on my channel one day. But I've seen some really stupid people who shouldn't be, like, in, commanding roles in that game, do some dumb things. What's the dumbest thing that I've ever seen, like, a commanding officer do in Hell Let Loose? Oh, yeah. So, basically what happened was, we were, I was in a Panther tank. So we were a tank crew. I was the tank commander, and me and my friend were in a tank. We were advancing to take an objective, and we got ambushed. And literally, all of our infantry support died. All of them died. They just, they got wiped out, but we were still standing in the tank. 2 tanks came at us. We knocked out both of the tanks. We destroyed them both. And what happened was, our tank, it got hit in the treads, and so the tracks got knocked out. And literally, we needed support. I didn't want to get out of the tank because I didn't want to get shot to repair. And so I was begging for infantry support. Like, I was like, somebody get over here and help. Somebody get over here and help. Like, help us right now. And, like, none of the squads were coming up to help us. Like, none of them. I don't know what they were doing. They were, like, all over the map, like, just not helping us at all. And the commander wasn't responding to us at all. Like, none of the COs were talking. There's, like, an officer chat in Hell Let Loose, and none of them were talking. They were just all completely silent. I was, like, the only commanding officer that was actually talking in Hell Let Loose. And I was like, what is going on? And so, what happened was, eventually, one of the guys got on the mic. And my friend joined another squad, so he could try to talk to the commanding officers. And literally, he said to them, like, why aren't you people talking on the mic? Why are you people not communicating? You're supposed to communicate with each other, relay orders out. And what happened was the commander finally put in his mic, and he finally started saying, he said, you can't expect everybody to have a mic in this game. That's what the commander said. And literally, my friend owned him, because my friend said to him, literally, you're on the PS5. Because all the commanding officers were on the PS5, all of them. You could tell if they're on the PS5 or the Xbox, but almost all of them were PS5 players. And he literally said, you got a mic in your controller. There's no excuse for not having a mic. And my friend was 100% right on that. So it's like, how stupid can you be like that? You're saying like, oh, not everybody can have a mic, but literally what the commander ended up doing when we were begging him to send support. What, Timmy?
I think your stream is kind of stopping at the moment.
No, I think it's good right now. Is it?
Is it? Let me check.
No, I think it's good. It just stream. No, it was just a lag. Lag for a
Okay.
moment.
Oh, okay.
But what I was saying is, when we were in that single tank, we probably killed 40 people in that one tank, not exaggeration. And what happened was, I was begging the commander
God
to send
damn
some
these
people up,
stupid wagons.
send some engineers up. You know, no man, that's not okay. You can't be yelling like that.
Sorry.
Yeah, but just please don't say things like that, and please don't yell. But it's about the commander. Is the commander was refusing to send support up to our tank to help us. We killed 40-something guys. And the commander, do you know what he said? He said, oh, just respawn and get a new tank. That's what he said. And I was thinking to myself, I was like, do you know how much supplies it costs to spawn a tank? You know, what are you doing exactly? So it was just that. It's just dumb commanders. The stream's laggy. I'm sorry about that, everyone.
You gonna rue this day. You hear me?
Okay.
When do I deliver this guy?
Wait until 4 minutes. Also, I was in a tiger tank once, and we had killed so many people in that tank on Hell Let Loose, and what happened was I had, the perfect position. I was to the side of the map. And I had the perfect position there. And whenever enemies would try to flank, they would just, the enemies, we were just mowed them down. We were in between, a few trees on, the side, near this farmhouse. And so it was just a perfect position. Because whenever the enemies would try to flank towards the objective, we'd take them down. And I was mowing down a lot of people with the machine gun. And what happened was, the commander was, saying, what are you doing with that tank out there? He just started yelling, what are you doing with that tank out there? It's bring it back here to the objective. And he's like, you don't have it on the objective right now. You're not helping. And I told the commander, I am protecting the objective. I have it in an area where they're flanking from. I know the enemy is flanking from this direction. I have the tank here. We've already killed 30-something people from this place alone. If I move the tank, they're going to flank you from this position. I was trying to tell the commander, and the commander's like, no, you move the tank back here to the objective. You protect the objective. You back here. And he had me, he wanted me to face my tank in a direction that was so weird. It was a direction that they weren't even coming from. The enemy was flanking from the right, and he wanted me to watch the left side. And I told the commander this is not a good idea, but he was having none of it. He was like, bring the tank back here. And so I listened to the commander. I took the commander's advice. I brought the tank back there. And I was getting a kill. I was getting a bunch of kills every 30 seconds in the place I was in before. When I moved the tank to the place the commander was in, I didn't get a kill for the rest of the match. I at least sat in the same spot for 10 minutes without a single kill. And guess what happened? That area that I was covering, a bunch of squads flanked that area. They built outposts and they built garrisons, which is used to spawn squads. And then they flanked the objective and they took it and we lost. And that was a perfect example of the commander being stupid in a game. It's when in Hell Let Loose, when you're playing with a team and your teammates are telling you why they're in a specific position, they're there for a specific reason. Oftentimes, they're not just going Rambo and playing Call of Duty. But that was a thing. And a lot of times is if you look, the sniper squads, the recons, are usually really far out. They're usually really far from the objective. And a lot of people are oh, why aren't they near the objective? Sniper squads aren't typically supposed to be near the objective. They're supposed to be out at a distance. They're supposed to go behind enemy lines. A sniper is supposed to go behind enemy lines with a spotter, and it's supposed to harass the infantry as they're moving up. That's the whole purpose of the sniper and the spotter combo in Hell Let Loose. But so the sniper isn't always meant to be with the team. That's what people don't understand about the sniper in Hell Let Loose. But that's why snipers run away a lot of times.
Yes, sir.
For that reason. Don't you find it strange how Red Dead Redemption 2 has been in development significantly longer than GTA, but yet Rockstar is so incompetent that they still update GTA and not Red Dead Online? Yeah, thank you, Jared, for the super chat. The thing about this is that, they, Rockstar had, this was, this game had potential. And I'll tell you something. This game was never going to beat GTA Online, we know that. But if Rockstar kept updating this game, I truly believe this game would have had at least half the players that GTA Online has. At least half, or even more. And you'd think, oh, half the players of GTA, that's not a lot. Think about it. All the players on GTA. If this game had half of those players, that would be really, really good. And so if they actually put, big updates every 6 months, if they released a big update every 6 months like they do on GTA on this game definitely would have potential. 100%. Thank you, Michelli, or Mitchell, not Michelli, Mitchell. Hey, professional, is watching your video on the food games, and I agree with you that this food games are scams. Are you going to make more GTA 5 lore? Thank you, Mitchell. I'm actually working on another GTA 5 lore right now.
I want to
Big
add to
fan
that real
question. Is there a
quickly.
game you won't
Go on.
play? Is there a game I won't play? Well, trying to think now. The only game I would really consider not playing is it has to be a really bad game. But I actually the worst game that I've ever played on this channel, like the worst one that I ever played as a playthrough, was Saints Row. Now, I'm not talking the original one. I'm talking the reboot. The reboot, that was the worst game that I played on this channel. Definitely was the Saints Row reboot, and it had some enjoyable parts. There were some parts that were fine, but then a lot of it was bad. And so Saints Row was probably the worst one that I played on this channel.
That previous one about the scam games. Do you remember when Sony added that STARS program?
Remind me what it was again?
Short summary. It sort of monetizes a few. Well.
Oh, was it the
it's more
program
like
where you can
like
exchange trophies for PlayStation Store credit?
It's more than trophies. It's a number of things that you can do, but it's sort of like those points programs. Like, oh, if you sign up for whatever, and even grocery stores will have their own points program sometimes. But it's different for the gaming. But anyways, you can get trophies. You can buy things. You can play certain stuff. It has a million different ways to do it. But I think trophies is one of them, that you get points, and these points can then be exchanged for potentially just straight up money to be used in the PlayStation Store. So
Yeah.
that is now something that can potentially be abused by getting such easy platinums.
I actually got $5 for free from PlayStation Stars.
Are you
Yeah,
from
the
New York
STARS
City?
program,
Me
I
too.
actually quite like it.
Yes, I am from New York City, McGuire. I'm from Brooklyn, New York originally. How could you tell? Was it my accent or yeah. But, generally from what I've seen in my comment section, people don't say that I don't really have a New York accent. But the thing is, though, when I moved to the Midwest, though, like, I moved to the Midwest, like, 2.5 years ago, so I've been out here for 2.5 years now at this point. People here generally can tell that I'm not from here. They just know. And a few people actually called out that I was originally from New York. I didn't even say it. And they're friendly, it's not like, nothing bad, but they're friendly. There was one person that I asked them how they knew that I was from New York. Was it my accent? And they told me that it's not my accent, it's my rhythm. It's how I, basically just talk, just how I make sentences, and just the way that I talk about certain things, the way words sound, and that's basically that. Okay, let's see here. What's your thoughts on Sony denying a Days Gone sequel in favor of like the third or fourth reboot of The Last of Us? I'll tell you this about the Days Gone. Days Gone is probably my favorite, like, zombie-infected game that I've played in many, many, many years. Definitely. I love Days Gone. That was my favorite game of 2019. You know, playing as like a biker in like an open world kind of like, you know, zombie infected game. Well, they're not really zombies; they're infected in the world. But I liked it. I thought it was cool. I did like it. And I thought it was better than The Last of Us. I did. I think Days Gone was a better game than The Last of Us. I did enjoy it more than The Last of Us. But Sony's just trying to milk The Last of Us till the end of time. So it's just, you know, I think the TV show's cool, but it's just, I think that Days Gone definitely deserved like a sequel.
I was very
this is right up your alley.
I actually like Days Gone. I was just playing it the other day, Days Gone.
Yeah, so this is right up your alley. Because you cover stuff like this.
Yep. Yeah, I cover a lot of post-apocalyptic games.
I need to buy and beat that game.
But yeah, speaking of that though, Pat, you definitely got to try out the Dying Light games for sure on your channel.
Will I play Hitman Freelancer? Hitman Freelancer, yes, probably tomorrow I'll have a video on it. So here's the thing, guys. IO Interactive contacted me, the developers of Hitman. I don't know whether they directly did it or because it was through Keymailer, which is a website that I use for like creators, and so they sent me a key of Hitman Freelancer. So I downloaded it last night, and I was playing. I haven't played Hitman in like a year, and so I was playing it just to get used to the controls. I'm typically pretty good at the Hitman games. And so I'll do a video on Freelancer, definitely. The only thing is they asked me just to cover it, to make a video on it. And so I'll do a video on it. And so that's that. So thank you, IO Interactive, for sending me a copy of Hitman Freelancer. But I will, I'll do a video on that probably tomorrow. But I'm glad they, but the thing about it is that, here's the thing is, Keymailer, didn't mention my, Hitman videos. They mentioned my Sniper Elite videos. So that was it. So that was, so I guess that's where they found me from, because Sniper Elite and Hitman are very similar in their gameplay-wise. Hey Pro, started college this week. Any tips on college life? And did you enjoy college as much as school? I'll tell you this. I think I enjoyed college more than high school. I did. College was more chill. It wasn't just, you know, it wasn't as, you know, crazy as high school. Do it more on your own time. Decide when you want the classes. You pick freedom more in the classes. And also, like, you know, my teachers were, like, panicking students about college, but college I didn't find that difficult, really. It was, like, some parts of the law classes that I took, some of the law classes got a little bit hard. But it wasn't, I didn't really ever think it was hard. In fact, the hardest class I thought was computer forensics. I thought that was the hardest class I ever did. But it was, but generally it wasn't really that, yeah, it generally wasn't that difficult. But about college, though, you're asking me did I enjoy it? Sometimes no. I didn't enjoy it more than high school, definitely. I guess it really depends. Let's see here. Go out.
Yeah, speaking of IO Interactive, they're making the 007 game as well.
Well, what I'll say, oh, I didn't know about that, but Rashawn, what I'll say about college is do you know what the thing that pissed me off the most about college was, honestly? It was the thing that pissed me off about it the most was the entitlement. That's what honestly pissed me off the most about it. It was that, like I have no problem with people wanting to go to college. I did it myself. I finished in a bachelor's degree. But the thing about it, what I'll say about it is that there are so many people out there that they act like if you don't go to college that you're like some kind of, fool, or that you're stupid, or that you're going to be a failure. And I've seen so many people like that. There's so many people that I know that acted just like that, where they were just this whole college entitlement. And they basically acted like if you didn't go to college that you were somehow stupid or something like that, which is just not true. People can become successful. They can become millionaires without even going to college. And so this, there was somebody asked me about President Truman earlier. President Truman is the only president in American history that has not had a college degree. And Truman was a pretty smart guy. And Truman was a soldier. That was his background. He wasn't he didn't go to college. And so it was like, but people kept making a big deal out of it. They're like, oh, the only president who didn't go, like when the History Channel talks about, they're like the only president that didn't go to college. It's like, well, why is that important? It's making it seem like college is necessary. But Truman was for the most part, I think he was a decent president. So he did stop North Korea. He did bring some stability during the Cold War. He was very he was not appeasing at all towards Stalin. So he was, you know, so he stood up to Stalin. So generally, he wasn't a perfect president, but, you know, he wasn't an idiot. So that was like it. So, you know, somebody like Truman can become president without a college degree. You know, and so it's just, you know, so don't think that you need, you know, necessarily need college to be successful. So that's
Yeah, right after high school, I've never been to college either.
I'm gonna be right back.
But yeah, Rashawn, I don't know what you're going to college for, but make sure that whatever you go to college for, you truly enjoy it. That was that. What I'll say about President Truman is President Truman was probably the most fearless, you know, American president in history ever. And the reason that I say that is because he about him is he was the only president who didn't have security. Really, do you know that? Well, only modern president, I should say, that didn't have security. Because, like, George Washington and Thomas Jefferson and John Adams would, like, walk the streets. Like, George Washington would do that. He'd walk the streets with no security when he was president. And so it was, but the, Truman was the only, like, modern president that walked the streets with, like, no security. And he didn't want security either, because he didn't want Secret Service to follow him around because he felt like that invaded his privacy. And so Truman would, like, walk down the street from the White House, the Capitol building, and he would go to a store, he'd buy a sandwich. That's, like, the type of person that he was. He was not, he actually didn't want the Secret Service to follow him around. But what happened was, even though he didn't want the Secret Service to follow him around, they still followed him around. They tailed him. They pretended to be civilians, to protect him. And they even hacked the traffic lights to make sure the traffic lights change when he's walking towards the, to make sure he's safe, just so he keeps moving, so he doesn't stop. And that was that. But yeah, Truman would, like, walk the streets without any, you know, any Secret Service protection. So he was, like, you know, he had to be really fearless to do something like that. He'd have to be a really, like, you know, tough guy, like, you know, mentally, I would say, to do that. You're the most powerful man in the world, and you don't want security with you. The funniest thing that Truman ever did as president, though, is what he did was he actually cursed out Molotov. Molotov was the foreign minister of the Soviet Union. I don't think we know the exact words what Truman said to him, but Truman cursed him out. Like, and when I say cursed him out, like, Truman used really foul language towards the Soviet foreign minister. Like, he really, you know, laid into him. And what happened was the Soviet foreign minister stormed out after Truman cursed at him, and he said, "In all my years as being a diplomat, I have never had anybody disrespect me so much." And Truman said to him that if you don't want somebody to disrespect you like this, then you keep your damn promises. And what he was referring to was all the promises that Stalin broke, because Stalin broke a lot of promises after the World War II had ended, especially with, like, how he took over, like, Eastern Europe, and, like, just, like, you know, the Soviets broke a lot of their promises that they had made during World War II, and so Truman was having none of that, and so he was, like, basically like a no BS guy. But, you know, maybe that also plays into that role, because he didn't go to college. Maybe that is some role in that, because he was, like, a no BS guy. So it was, you know, I guess he didn't have, like, a lot of that entitlement mindset. But I'm not saying that people that go to college are entitled. I'm not saying that by any means. What I'm just saying is maybe because he didn't go to college, he had, like, a different mindset for, like, a lot of things, especially. And so he dealt with things very differently. But that was just, that. I know I got a little sidetracked here. But yeah, to answer your question, Rashawn, is, you know, make sure that you enjoy going to college. Like, that you go there for what you truly want and you truly, like, enjoy. Because there's a lot of people that shouldn't be going to college, but are going to college because their parents mostly forced them to do it. And that's, like, you know, I generally think that that's a bad idea. If somebody doesn't want to go to college, their parents shouldn't force them to go to college. They should want to go to college on their own volition.
Harry S. Truman, the 33rd president of the United States.
Yeah. I mean, Truman wasn't a perfect president. He did do some stupid and bad things. But, you know, like I said, he was, like, basically, like, a no BS kind of guy. And so that was, like, you know, you just Google it when Truman cursed out the Soviet foreign minister, and that was a very, like, funniest thing he did. But, yeah. Molotov deserved that cursing out, definitely. Molotov, the guy that that Truman had cursed out, What happened was the Soviet Union was dropping incendiary bombs on Finland. So like, and incendiary bombs would just burn houses and just burn streets. Like, and these weren't just bombs that would start a small fire. These would start massive fires. And so the Soviets, when they invaded Finland, they tried to burn down like cities and towns and just destroy Finnish infrastructure. And what happened was the Molotov said that the Soviets weren't dropping bombs, we're dropping food aid, we're dropping humanitarian aid, when it was just a load of nonsense. So that's the type of guy that Truman had cursed out. So that's all you need to know about somebody like Molotov. But that's also why it's all called the Molotov cocktail in like the incendiary grenade in games. The reason it's called a Molotov cocktail is because of just it was an insult to Molotov, who was the Soviet foreign minister, and the Finns took like they took Molotovs, basically, you know, bottles of gasoline in a rag, light it on fire, and they would throw that at the Soviet tanks and set them on fire. So that's why it was called that. Let me see here. Freakers is what they were commonly called in Days Gone. Recently infected people by the
Yeah.
Oh, well, the thing about that is, the only thing that I was disappointed in Days Gone is they never explained how somebody gets infected. I didn't think they ever explained that, really, because the zombies just attack you and just, like, kill you, but they never really explained, like, is it a bite, or, like, what happens. But I think that's, like, the one thing they never, you know, really explained in Days Gone. Thank you, JD, for the super
That's why
chat.
we needed people for Days Gone.
Thank you,
Probably
Sai.
would've known.
You have an accent when you say college and horrible. Oh, okay. There's another game that's exactly like Stroke and jumping games called My Name is Mayo. There's even physical copies for it. Maybe. Add it to your collection. What? There's physical copies of this game too?
My name is Mayo. I feel like I've seen something like that.
Oh, thank you, Bunny. Thanks for the super chat. I'm working on my math homework right now. I suck at math. Yep. I do too. I did too. I sucked at math too, Jimmy. When I was in school, I always did pretty good in every subject except math. Math is like my, you know, least favorite subject, and it's the subject that I did the worst in. And you know, you'd think that somebody like me would be really good at math, because like I do all these calculations, these money guides and all this other stuff. You'd think that somebody like me would be really good at math. Well, no, I was never really good at math. I was not, I just wasn't into it personally. I didn't like it a lot. So yeah. I guess everyone just has their strengths and weaknesses.
I'm more of a history buff, but I always struggled in math. Like I could never handle math. They have a machine gun nest in a hill.
I took care of it.
The only time math really matters and stuff when it comes to money, that's pretty much it.
Yeah.
In my opinion.
Ow.
Or depending on your job.
And science.
Yeah.
Some science jobs actually do need math.
History and geography is the best education, I would say.
I got the guys in the tower.
Thank you, son of a pirate. Well, they're both really terrible, you know, organizations.
Punk.
Got him. Gotten much better. I've gotten much better with the first person.
There's a bunker storage in here.
And the first person at Red Dead works so much better than GTA's.
Yeah, first person. This game is generally better than GTA's first person.
It's a lot more smooth.
I did something. There's cannonballs in here?
Yeah, there's a collectible item in one of the shacks over here.
Hold on, which shack? Hold on.
I guess the Freakers origins like the Walking Dead's virus origin. They don't tell you exactly how it started.
Yep.
No, they do tell in Days Gone. They tell you where the virus came from. It came from the lab.
Oh.
Yeah, Melons was watching me play Days Gone the other day on a share screen.
Yep. Got an RPK.
Yeah, and I also had a Dragunov sniper as well.
I didn't see the Dragunov, but I saw the machine gun. Oh, the LMG.
The guy who does Deacon, the voice of Deacon, isn't that the same guy who does Darth Maul in the Clone Wars?
Sam Witwer?
Yes.
I have to hear his voice, but I believe so. He also did Galen Merrick from The Force Unleashed 1 and 2.
Yeah.
Really good guy.
Sam Witwer's a good actor.
Yeah. He did Maul so perfectly, especially in the Star Wars Rebels.
One thing I find funny about Deacon in Days Gone is when he talks to himself a lot.
He's a lonely
Well,
guy with a
he yells a
motorcycle.
lot talking to himself, and that's...
It's like when he grabs a field pin, he goes, "Field?"
Oh, it's friendly, okay.
I got the bounty.
Do I think Calvin Coolidge caused the Great Depression? No. Do you know what the Great Depression was basically caused by? It was caused by a simple thing that went wrong. It was people spending money they didn't have. That's what caused the Great Depression. Spending money you didn't have. And it was that people constantly kept borrowing money and kept spending money. And that's what caused the Great Depression. And it was also people. So basically, this is what caused the Great Depression. Is you had something new called credit that came out, where you could borrow money, and you could put you could put it on credit. And so what happened was people were borrowing money from the banks, and they were borrowing thousands of dollars in today's money. So there was working class people that were just borrowing thousands of money. And do you know what they were doing with that money? They were putting it into the stock market. So you had people that were taking money that they didn't have and borrowing it and putting it in the stock market. And then what happened was the stock market just crashed one day. And it was because of this. People were borrowing money. The investors were uncertain at that point because they knew that people were just... they didn't have actual money they were putting into it, just money that they had borrowed from the banks. And so basically the stock market isn't a reflection of the economy, it's a reflection of how people feel about the economy. The stock market crashed, you had Black Tuesday, and what ended up happening after the stock market crashed, the people who borrowed the money lost all their money. And now they can't pay back the banks. And the money back then was not government insured. So when you had money in your bank, it wasn't government insured. Today it's like $250,000 that's government insured. Back then it wasn't. That's like one of the best things FDR did, is when he made insured money from like the government. But your government back then was not federally insured. And so what happened was the people borrowed the money, put it in the stock market crashed. The people lose their money, they can't pay back the banks. Now the banks lose all their money. And now the banks can't pay people who have bank accounts. So imagine you have like thousands of dollars in your bank, and you would, even if you weren't one of those people that was borrowing money from the banks and putting it in the stock market, if you were just some regular guy that was just working his job, not doing the stock market or anything, not borrowing money, and you were still affected by this because your bank would collapse. So your bank would shut down, you wouldn't be able to access your funds, and any money that you had in the bank, you'd lose. It was gone. It was gone at that point because the bank shut down. So the bank didn't have anything to give you, and it was over. And that's basically what happened with the Great Depression. You had people that were just borrowing money that they didn't have, and it just caused the whole economy just to come tumbling down. So it's like people borrowing money, reckless spending, and it was just people that just didn't borrowing money and spending money that they didn't have. That's pretty much what it was. And so that's why I personally don't like it when I see like government spending just so much money and borrowing money. I really don't like that personally. Do I think we're going towards depression? Probably not. But like I don't want to scare people, anything like that either. But it's just like that's basically what I see it as my opinion. It was just reckless spending, and it was just people just borrowing money that they didn't have, and it was just a bad bad policy overall. Random question, would you quit video games, internet, social media for a month if it meant Red Dead Redemption 2 Online got fresh updates and good updates again? Well, it depends on what. If you're going to ask me to quit the internet for like a month, and just quit playing video games for a month. If we're getting like Telegram stuff, no. But if we actually get like actual good stuff, like properties like houses that we can buy and customize, like bank robberies and free with like actual big DLCs, yeah, I'd stop
robberies
playing
in general.
Yeah. You know how stupid this is?
Imagine a game where you can play as an outlaw.
Yeah. This is a game in the Wild West, and you still can't rob people. Like, why can't I rob a carriage that's coming out towards me? Like a carriage that just coming down the road. Why can't I rob it? So that's like, that's that. Like, I know you can open up the little chest, but the chests almost always have the same exact thing inside. Like, why can't I just point my gun at the carriage driver? He gives me whatever money he's carrying, stuff like that. Like, why is that just...
Here, I suggest you buy yourself a drink.
Hey buddy, I'm watching Tombstone for the 50th time tomorrow. Which prominent figure of the Wild West interests you the most? Have or will you ever create a lore video covering that person? What Wild West person interests me the most? I don't know if I really have like a figure that interests me the most. Like there are people that like there are like some like outlaws that I know a little bit about, but they're not like maybe Wild Bill Hickok. Maybe he was I find him probably the most interesting, gunslinger, but he wasn't really an outlaw.
Isn't he the one that died in a poker game?
Yes, he died in a poker game. Yes.
What about Butch Cassidy and the Wild Bunch?
The thing about Wild Bill Hickok is he died in Deadwood. And so he died in a poker. So this really good gunslinger that could outgun anybody, and he got killed in a poker game. That was just what happened. But the guy that killed him, the story is like really strange. It's like the guy claims to be an assassin also, but he was playing poker at the same time. It was just like a really weird story. But basically, what happened was, so Wild Bill Hickok was a pretty honorable guy. He wasn't like, just a ruthless guy. And what happened with Wild Bill Hickok, I mean, he obviously killed people, like, he was a bounty hunter and stuff like that, but he wasn't like, just some, like, ruthless, cold-blooded guy. When he played against a guy in poker, and the guy he played against in poker lost his money. And what happened was, Wild Bill Hickok gave him some of his money back, and gave him money for dinner, so the guy could still have a meal at the saloon, and told him, don't play poker if you don't know what you're doing. So basically gave him back his money and bought him dinner, and told him, don't play poker if you don't know what you're doing. Giving him friendly advice. But the guy, the scumbag he told that to, and he gave him back his money, he didn't see it as that, and so the next day, he came into the saloon, and he shot him in the back of the head while he was playing poker, because he felt insulted when he did that to him. And so, some guy is being friendly to you, gives you back your money after he beats you in poker, and just tells you don't play poker if you don't know what you're doing, and you're going to feel insulted by that. And what ended up happening was the guy that killed him, I forget the guy's name, he went to trial, and this was in modern-day South Dakota. So he went to trial, and he was found not guilty in the trial. And so he was released. And I think his reasoning for his defense was, I think it was that he claimed that Wild Bill Hickok killed his brother or something like that years earlier. It was something he claimed on. I don't know if it was true or not, but he got out of it. He somehow swayed the jury. He got out of it, and then what ended up happening was he went to Wyoming, and when he went to Wyoming, he started bragging, and this was his downfall. He's like, I was the guy who killed Wild Bill Hickok, and so if you kill a famous gunslinger, even if you get away with that, you don't want to be the guy that goes around bragging that. You don't, because that's going to attract a lot of attention. This guy doesn't know how to, you can see where this is going. This guy doesn't know how to defend himself for his life. And so he killed Wild Bill Hickok in a really cheap way, just shooting him in the back of the head, very dishonorable way. And so what ended up happening was, when he was bragging about killing Wild Bill Hickok in Wyoming, he got arrested by the local authorities. The local sheriff arrested him, and he put him on trial for murder of Wild Bill Hickok. And what happened was, he tried to claim double jeopardy, which double jeopardy is basically that you can't be tried for the same crime twice. But the thing is, though, is they were able to try him, and they tried him a second time. Why? If the South Dakota court said he was not guilty, why was he tried in the Wyoming court? Because the South Dakota court was not recognized by the Wyoming court, because this was the Wild West, and these were unincorporated territories. And so they didn't see that as double jeopardy, because the South Dakota court was a court run by the civilians, the people in the town. It wasn't a government court, really. So it was like a court that people ran, people gave some money to the course, a sheriff. And a lot of these sheriffs that were in the Wild West, they were sheriffs, but they didn't have government backing. And so they were technically vigilantes, I guess you could put it that way. And so these sheriffs, they were, a lot of times they relied on donations. That's how these sheriffs got by. It was donations that they had gotten, that they survived on to uphold the law. So people would donate to the sheriff to help him protect the town. That was basically it. So they weren't government backed, a lot of them were. And so because the South Dakota court was not government backed, the Wyoming government did not recognize the South Dakota court in Deadwood. Well, it wasn't even South Dakota, it was called the Dakota Territory, so they didn't recognize the Dakota Territory a court. And so the guy was tried, the guy who killed Wild Bill Hickok, and he got hanged. He got found guilty, and he got killed for it. So like, honestly, he would have gotten away with it if he just shut his mouth, but the guy just couldn't resist bragging. And it was just not even just that, but not even that you kill a famous gunslinger, but you brag about shooting him in the back of the head, literally, when he's in the middle of a poker match. Like, what kind of guy does something like that? So yeah, he definitely deserved to get hanged, and it was, he brought it on himself. So it was just that. So Wild Bill Hickok wasn't really a bad guy. So I personally find him the most interesting, Wild West, probably the most interesting Wild West figure. But yeah, for somebody that's and that shows you how easy it is that this Wild Bill Hickok, that was this amazing gunslinger, nobody could beat him in a gunfight, and yet he gets killed in the stupidest way ever, getting shot in the back of the head while playing poker. So that's just so yeah, that just shows you how crazy things can happen sometimes. Let's see here.
Yeah, Pat, that kind of reminds me of how.
Oh, sorry. Go on, Dom.
It kind of reminds me of that one time how you're talking about how you're talking about the peasants, how they couldn't. It was illegal for them to use crossbows back then and stuff, and then they could only use bow and arrows because it takes skill to use a bow and arrow, but crossbow doesn't take skill because it's easier to use. And it's almost like this. It's almost like the same situation in a way. It's like the Wild Bill Hickok guy. He's really good and stuff, but some idiot, of course, kills him in the most cheapest way, kind of like that in a way, like what you were talking to me about.
Well, I mean, crossbows aren't necessarily like a cheap weapon in combat. There's another weapon that was used in warfare throughout history, but it was just the way that the guy went about it. The thing is though, is that here's the thing about the Wild West, what people don't know about, is that back then, in the Wild West time, you could kill somebody if they agreed to duel you. So even if there was a sheriff, the sheriffs would allow this oftentimes. If you had a problem with somebody, you would say, let's duel. And the person doesn't have to duel. They don't have to. So if they don't want to duel, they don't have to do it. If they just shoot them for refusing to duel, that's murder. They'll get hanged for it. But if the one guy challenges another guy to a duel, and they both go out, in the middle of the town, similar to what you see in the movies, but they duel each other, and one guy kills the other guy, he gets away with it. There's no court or anything like that. It's not technically, it's a weird thing. It's not self-defense, but it's more about that, it's not technically self-defense because you accepted to fight. But it was that the other guy was also prepared to kill you. So it was a challenge. That was more of it. So technically you couldn't be tried for that. So that's what happened. But the thing is though, is that a lot of people would not refuse duels. Now, if you got into an argument with somebody and somebody said, I'm going to duel you, let's take this outside. The reason that a lot of people would not refuse duels back then is it was all about the reputation. It was about the reputation. People in the Wild West value their reputation a lot. Their reputation meant a lot to them. And so if some guy challenged you to a duel and you refused to duel him, it was like you losing your honor in a way. And so it was that people would say, oh, that's the guy who refused to duel. And they would say that. And so it was more about defending your honor. And that's why people would duel even if they didn't want to, because it was about that. Now, when you see it in the movies, when you see it when they shoot the gun out of somebody's hand without killing them, very unrealistic. That didn't typically happen. You typically wouldn't have people in a duel that would shoot another person's gun out of their hand. Really, nothing like that would happen. If at most, maybe they would shoot them in like a non-vital spot. But even if they shoot them in a non-vital spot, it could still kill. Like you could shoot somebody in the leg and it'll still kill them if it hits the artery. So like maybe like a famous gunslinger would shoot them like in a specific spot where it wouldn't kill them, but it still wound them. So it's not like they wouldn't just shoot the guns out of their hands like you see in the movies. That's what I think is the most unrealistic thing about the movies, when they shoot guns out of people's hands. That didn't really happen. But the dueling was thing. But here's the thing is in my country, America, there was actually the dueling was actually largely accepted for the most part. Even though it was illegal on paper, it was mostly accepted. But the government went after dueling in the early 19th century. And the reason, in the Wild West it was common, but in the East Coast it didn't really happen. And the reason for that, you know why? Alexander Hamilton actually died in a duel. So one of the American founding fathers, he died in a duel. And they were using flintlock musket pistols back then, but he died in a duel. And so it was very different than like a Wild West duel, where a Wild West duel is basically you had whatever gun you had on you is what the gun that you would use. In a duel, you would use specific dueling pistols. So there would be like a case, and each person would choose their gun in the case. And that was to make sure that it was fair. So you choose what gun you want to shoot. So there was typically there was 2 guns. And one guy would say, this is my gun, the other person would say, this is my gun, and they would turn their backs to each other, they would walk in the opposite directions, and then they would just both fire. And basically, Alexander Hamilton, he's the guy that's on the $10 bill. So when you look at the guy that's on the $10 bill, that's the guy who died in the duel, one of the American founding fathers. He's one of the most important people in American history. He helped make like the first American banks. He was very instrumental in the creation of the federal government. He was also Washington's aide de camp during the Revolutionary War. So Hamilton was a very important guy in history. But he died in a duel. That was the thing about him. The guy that killed him in a duel, his name was Burr. Oh, I have free aim on still. No. Oh. You didn't have to do that.
He was red. It looks like he was gonna
I know
kill
he was.
you,
I know he
so-
was gonna kill, but I was gonna just tie him up. That's what I was just gonna do.
Oh well. He would kill himself anyway if he was tied up.
No, he's a new player. I doubt he knows it, but yeah, basically the problem that Alexander Hamilton had with Burr, the reason they dueled each other is because Alexander Hamilton didn't think that Burr could be trusted. He just didn't like him. He never liked him in general. Yeah. Yeah, I'll get him in a moment here.
That works.
But about Burr is
Don't kill him.
According to most sources, what happened was during Alexander Hamilton was a Federalist, and so he hated he didn't, I don't know if I would use the word hated, but he really didn't like the Democrat Republicans. That was the name of the party back then. It was the Democratic Republican Party. And it was the Democrat Republican Party was a party that was mostly founded by Thomas Jefferson. And the Democrat Republican Party was always about smaller government, individual liberty. Where the Federalists were about individual liberty, but they wanted more of a stronger central government. And so Burr was from the Democratic Republican Party. And not even Thomas Jefferson liked him. So even though he was from Thomas Jefferson's party, Thomas Jefferson didn't like Burr either and didn't trust him. And when the presidential election was actually happening, the third presidential election, Hamilton actually endorsed Thomas Jefferson, even though Thomas he didn't get along with Thomas Jefferson a lot. And so it was because he just didn't like Burr so much. But even though Thomas Jefferson had his disagreements with like Hamilton, he took that personally when like Hamilton had like been killed in a duel, and that was like very Thomas Jefferson was very gentleman about it. Paid his condolences. But about the duel Hamilton and Burr, there's a few different accounts on what happened. Oh, did you tie him up? Oh, you did.
I did, and I was burning.
What the? What are you doing, Grace?
I shot him with some incendiary round, and the fire kind of spread and killed him.
Yeah, that was just... But about the Hamilton-Burr duel, there's a few different versions on what happened during the duel specifically. We know that Hamilton was shot during the duel and he died. But during the duel, a lot of people say that Hamilton actually fired his gun in the air. And so he just fired his gun off to the side. Refused to aim at Burr, but Burr still shot and killed him. And that was, so even though Burr got away with it, he was found not guilty, but his political career was over. Because he was known as the guy who killed Alexander Hamilton.
Pro.
What?
This is Sam Witwer as Darth Maul.
Oh, I think I just strangled him. I wasn't even trying to do that. I forgot about that.
Yeah.
I forgot that you can strangle somebody in this game. I actually completely forgot about that. You can strangle another player. And I completely forgot that you could do that. But that was just, yeah.
Sam Witwer does a very good job at being Darth Maul.
I think he was using Deadeye. He landed those shots perfectly on me there.
Well, he's now sleeping with the grass.
Let me see here. I missed a bunch of comments. Thank you, Epic. Thank you for sponsoring my channel. Hey, Pro, I saw something stupid on a video game where some idiot said the North Korean government was humane. Who? What? Who says that?
Oh, Brandon's here.
That person sounds stupid. Thank you, Justin, for the super chat. You mean those pistols
That's
the pirate uses? Yes, those were flintlocks.
That's your name too, Melons?
Yeah.
John Wesley Hardin and Hickok had a truce until Hardin shot a man for snoring. Hickok called Hardin Little Arkansas, though Hardin was a Texan. Oh, is that the guy who shot
Spider-Man
Hickok?
guy.
Well, thank you, Ezekiel. Thank you for the super chat.
Ow.
I can't hurt him because he's parlayed with me. Or you
Guys,
can hurt him.
just deliver the bounty whenever you have the time.
Zom, go.
Yeah.
It's your wagon.
Yep.
But yeah, that's the thing. That's really sad. Hamilton had a really sad death. He did.
I'll do it right now.
Hamilton was also what a lot of people don't know about
Yeah,
Alexander
what do you
Hamilton is Hamilton was an abolitionist. He was against slavery, and Hamilton was also one of the first people that opened an African American school in New York. So he opened a school for freedmen at the time so that they could be educated. It wasn't just a school for kids, it was also a school for adults, because a lot of adults in that time period didn't know how to read. So Hamilton had opened a school for African Americans back then, but a lot of people don't know about that history also. But it was just he had a very sad death, just dying in that duel. But you know what bothers me so much is that people just know Alexander Hamilton from the play. That's it. They don't even know really that he was a founding father. They just know him from the play. That's just it. It's like I bet you that a lot of the people don't even know he's on the $10 bill. Like they just refer to the play, but that's it. They don't even know about the his other contributions. I saw the guy you kill in Valentine popped up at a saloon while you talking about a duel and gunslinger stuff. He thought he's a gunslinger? Well, thank you, Patrick, for the super chat.
What's this?
There's a play called Hamilton, I believe, and it's just, people just, people know Alexander Hamilton mostly from the play, but they don't even know that he was on the $10 bill.
Watch it when you get the chance.
I'm gonna go into poker right now, guys.
Alright.
Okay.
Pro, could you do hello?
Okay, let's see here. Public buy-in. Hardin and Hickok were friends until he shot a man for snoring. Hickok was the sheriff. He often said about Hardin that he never met anyone that needed more self-defending. Oh. I've been to Poland before. But yeah, about crossbows, what we were what my friend was asking me about earlier. So what people don't know is that the crossbow is probably the greatest weapon invention in like medieval times, and you can argue it probably existed before medieval times. You know, going back to ancient China, they had crossbows. But yeah, crossbows were probably the most effective and just the most, you know, the most effective weapon probably in that time period, I would say. And the reason that here's what about crossbows that people don't know, a little history about them. Crossbows were actually banned in medieval Europe. So they were, you were not, if you were a peasant back then, you were not allowed to own a crossbow. Now, who banned crossbows? The Pope. The Pope banned crossbows. The Pope had political power over the monarchs in Europe, and the Pope issued a declaration banning crossbows. And so peasants were forbidden from owning crossbows. The government could own crossbows if they wanted. The knights had crossbows. The peasants were forbidden from it. Peasants could maybe have a longbow, but they could not have a crossbow. Now, why? Why didn't the Catholic Church want peasants to have crossbows? The reason the Catholic Church and the monarchies, the reason they didn't want peasants to have crossbows in that time period is because that if you... In order to get good with a bow and arrow, you have to train for years. To be a really good archer, you have to train for years and get good with it. A crossbow, you could learn how to shoot a crossbow in literally a day. And you could kill a heavily armored knight with a crossbow bolt, because those crossbow bolts are strong. They can pierce armor. You could kill a heavily armored knight in just training with a knight who had trained for many years in just one day with a crossbow. And just training one day with a crossbow. And that's why they didn't want peasants to have them. It was because it was the elites in that time period, the elites, the monarchies, the aristocrats, the people who ran the countries. They were the people who oppressed the peasantry. They oppressed the poor, they oppressed the peasants. They didn't want the peasants to have crossbows because they were scared that if peasants had crossbows, they could overthrow the government, and they could overthrow the monarchies, they could overthrow the aristocrats, and they could overthrow the church. But that's why they didn't want that's why they didn't want them to have crossbows back then. Because they were scared of peasants possibly revolting. Because in that time period, the poor had really bad lives. Like, the poor don't have good lives today, sure. But back then, the poor had really, really bad lives. Much worse than what it is today, at least in the Western world. It was just really, really bad. You know, you would live on like you would live on places called manors. And a manor was basically like a place where just like it was like a small village. Like a small village was inside the manor and had like a big wall around it, like a big wall of a gate. And there was typically like a big mansion inside the manor. The mansion was owned by the aristocrat, the noble. And so the aristocrat would have knights that would also patrol the walls and stuff like that. And so how the manor system basically worked is that if you were a peasant, you had to work for the lord, the aristocrat, and you had to pay the aristocrat rent oftentimes. You didn't even own your own land. And whenever you grew the crops, the aristocrat would just take like 70% of your crops. So they'd take way more than half of your crops, and they would just sell that off. And then they would take a cut. They would take a cut of that money, and they would give that to the king. And that is how back then, how monarchies were funded back then. It was the aristocrats would tax the peasants, and then they would give a cut of that tax to the king, and the king would grant them permission to rule in their manors. That's how back then in that time period, how the system worked. And it was a system basically it was a system based on exploitation. The Lord would argue that the Lord would say, oh, we're protecting the peasants. Because what happened was when the Roman Empire fell, the barbarians and the highwaymen took over. And what would happen is the highwaymen were basically bandits that would stay on the roads. They would wait on the roads, and they would wait till like merchants and people were traveling in between roads, and they would rob and kill them. And so the poor wanted protection, and so they went to the lords for protection. And the lords would say, "Oh, come live on my manor, and you'll be protected." But then the lords were just taking advantage of them and just using them for their labor. And so that was like, it was not a good time period to be a peasant. And eventually, it boiled down in the French Revolution. Like, it was like hundreds of years of just oppression, constant, like these aristocrats, these kings, just oppressing the poor constantly, treating the poor like garbage, like not giving them any rights whatsoever. And then it blew up in their face in the French Revolution. That's why the French Revolution was so violent. It was so violent because people were just so pissed off at the monarchy, and they were so pissed off at the aristocracy. It was just that people were also starving during the French Revolution. That's why the French Revolution got so violent. It was because when the poor didn't have anything to eat. Imagine being like a poor peasant in like revolutionary France, and like you're working day and night, and you barely have enough money to put food on the table, and you're watching your wife and kids starve, and then at the same time you see some like rich aristocrat that's sitting in their house eating cake, which isn't like a necessary food, and then they're calling you peasants, and they're looking down on you like you're nothing. And that's what happened during the French Revolution. The people got really, really pissed off at being exploited. They got really pissed off at being pushed around, and they just overthrew the government. It was like a violent mob of people that just overthrew the government. That's what basically happened. There's a bunch of I'll say this: there's a bunch of stupid people out there that when you talk about the French Revolution, they try to make it seem like the monarchy were the good guys during the French Revolution. The monarchy were not the good guys during the French Revolution, definitely. I wouldn't say the revolutionaries were essentially the good guys either, but what they wanted was good. It was their goals were good originally. It was just the revolution got a little out of control later on with Robespierre. But it was mostly because the monarchies and the aristocrats were treating the peasants like garbage, and the peasants revolted. And that was, what happened in the French Revolution. I'm sorry if I talk a lot, guys. I do like history a lot. Did I want to be a history teacher? I considered it at one point, but probably not. Thank you, Jonathan, for the super chat. When the Wolverine game from Insomniac comes out, probably between 2024 and 2025, are you going to buy it? Maybe. I don't know. I'll have to wait and see. Thank you, Jonathan, for the super chat also. And thank you, Binded Eagle. Thanks, man. I don't know, not that much into, like, superhero games. Let's see, what has he got? Ah... From playing Assassin's Creed Unity, I'm not surprised that the French Revolution, happened. The thing about Assassin's Creed Unity is Assassin's Creed Unity was pretty historically accurate in a lot of the parts of the French Revolution. If you play the co-op campaign is actually pretty historically accurate in the timeline and the events, because the co-op campaign focuses more on the historical events of the French Revolution, and it is pretty historically accurate in that regard. But do you know also in Assassin's Creed Unity? Do you know the part when Elise and Arno confront Robespierre, and Elise just shoots him in the face with her pistol, and then she says, "Where's Germain?" That actually happened in real life. Robespierre actually got shot in the head. So that actually did happen. He got shot in the head, and he survived his injury. And there's two different versions on how Robespierre got shot in the head. The first version is that he tried to shoot himself in the head, because at the time Robespierre was actually holed up in a hotel. And what happened was the government, the National Convention, that was the French Parliament during the Revolution, had turned against Robespierre, and Robespierre became like a crazy guy. He was constantly, if you slightly disagreed with Robespierre in that time period, he would declare you counter-revolutionary, and he could have you sent to the guillotine. And so Robespierre had so many people killed. And then he actually went to the French Parliament, and he said, "I have a list of traitors, a list of like traitors that are like I'm gonna list off." And then he refused to give out that name when they asked him who are the people on it, like they were demanding to know who it was. He was refusing to give off that name, probably because he was scared of the mob in the National Convention. And then what happened was he actually ended up held up in a hotel, and the National Convention sent the National Guard in. The National Guard were actually wearing the exact same uniforms as Robespierre's soldiers, the ones who were loyal to him, because there was National Guard soldiers that were loyal to Robespierre. They were wearing the exact same uniforms. So imagine how crazy that situation get when you have soldiers fighting other soldiers who are wearing the exact same uniform as you. But The soldiers had stormed the hotel. They got into a big battle. And what happened was Robespierre tried to run into one of the rooms. And either he shot himself in the head or a soldier shot him in the head, but he survived. And so in Assassin's Creed Unity, when you see Elise actually shoot him in the head, that actually happened. He did get shot in the head. But Robespierre was actually executed the next morning. And he got sent to the guillotine, and he was still kind of conscious of what was going on, but his injury when he got shot in the head was like so bad, I don't think he fully realized what was going on. So that was what happened to Robespierre at that time. But yeah, Robespierre deserved it in the end. He did. Robespierre is a very controversial figure in history, because here's the thing about Robespierre is that Robespierre generally thought what he was doing was good. So he wasn't like, he generally believed that what he was doing was good. We know it was bad, but he generally truly believed that what he was doing was good and that he was trying to stop the enemies of the French Revolution. Do I think Robespierre was an evil person? I think that my view of Robespierre is, I think that Robespierre originally was a good person, when the revolution first started. I think he was a good person. I think he did have a good heart at the start of the revolution. And he opposed the death penalty. He did. Robespierre was against the death penalty, if you believe that. The guy who sent so many people to death, he was actually originally against the death penalty. He didn't support that. But he abolished slavery. He did. But what happened about him is later with the revolution, when the revolution ended its more extremist stages, and you had like a bunch of other countries, like you had Prussia, Austria, Spain, and Great Britain all invading France, he went crazy. Basically, he was fully convinced in his mind that there was this giant conspiracy out against the revolution and that he had to stop it. And so he started labeling everyone as basically counter-revolutionary. If you didn't agree with him, you were counter-revolutionary. You were against the revolution. And so he basically started that term, counter-revolutionary. It came from revolutionary France. And so he just went crazy and just started stoning people to the guillotine. And eventually, just the terror that he caused, he became a victim of his own terror. So that's the thing about Robespierre is, if Robespierre, he became so crazy that he even tried to make his own religion. He did. Robespierre, it was the cult of the supreme being. So Robespierre even tried to make his own religion. That's how crazy he got. So do I think he was an evil person? I think he was a bad person. Originally, I think he was a good person, but I think that as time went on and the revolution ended its crazy stages, he became a bad person. He went, crazy. I don't know if mad of power is a term that I would use, because he generally believed that he was doing the right thing, but he definitely went insane. Now, when Robespierre was saying that there was a conspiracy to put the revolution down, he was partially right on that. There was a conspiracy to end the French Revolution but the conspiracy was largely outside of France. It wasn't inside France. It was largely outside of France. It was Spain, Great Britain, Prussia, and Austria. Those countries at the time period, they were plotting to put down the revolution. The reason they were plotting to put down the revolution is because the French Revolution, it basically reduced the power of the aristocracy. It ended monarchy and reduced the power of the aristocracy. And so the other monarchs at that time period, they had the choice. They had two choices. They could either, one, they could improve conditions for the poor, or they could try to put the revolution down. Guess what they did? They tried to put the revolution down. They didn't want to improve conditions for the poor. And so they tried to violently put down the revolution. There was enemies out to get the revolution. And there was a conspiracy to put the revolution down in France itself, but the conspiracy was maybe a few hundred people at most. It wasn't thousands of people. Like, Robespierre was convinced there was like thousands of people involved. It wasn't that many. It was maybe a few hundred at most. So there was a conspiracy to end the revolution, but it wasn't as big as Robespierre thought, and so Robespierre went crazy with that. The thing about Robespierre is that he's that type of person that you say in history, what's the term that you say is, the term is, I think it is, that you survive long enough, that you're a hero, that you survive long enough that you become a villain, or it's something like that. The line is, somebody will probably know in the comments, but it's that line is, if Robespierre did not kill anybody, if he didn't do that whole reign of terror, he would have gone down as like one of the most important people in history and like an actual hero in history if he didn't kill anybody, if he didn't institute that terror. Because everything he did, for the most part, other than the terror, was good. Like, he brought a lot of reforms into France. He made equality under the law. He reduced the power of the aristocracy. He helped the poor. He ended slavery. He did a lot. Robespierre did do good things. But unfortunately, he went crazy. And he started killing a bunch of people. And so if he didn't go crazy and he didn't kill a bunch of people, he would have gone down as like one of the best people in history. But it was that So that's the thing is, do I feel bad that he got executed? No. I think he deserved it. I think he deserved to get executed in the end. The French Parliament was right to execute him because he was crazy at that point. He had to be stopped. He was going to keep executing people. But, if he hadn't gone crazy, Robespierre would have been, one of the, best people in history, definitely, if he didn't go crazy. You either die a hero or live long enough to see yourself become a villain. Yeah, that's pretty much what it was. Do I think Louis XVI was a good man? No, I don't. I think that he was same logic applies to Benedict Arnold. Well, Benedict Arnold, America's greatest traitor. If Benedict Arnold did not betray America, he would have been one of the most famous Americans. He would have had cities named after him. There definitely would have been a city named after him, Arnold. There definitely would have been a city like that named after him. He probably could have even been president one day. So he would have been one of the founding fathers if he hadn't betrayed America. But, he's a traitor. That was it. And, when about Benedict Arnold really quickly about him, some people defend Benedict Arnold and they say that Benedict Arnold was, basically pushed around and he was, insulted and that's why he betrayed, the country. Partially true. Benedict Arnold was harassed a lot of times. He was insulted. A lot of people didn't have respect for him. But Benedict Arnold also lived a very lavish lifestyle. He had a house where it was Philadelphia. He married a loyalist woman. So the woman that he married, Peggy Shippen, she was a loyalist. So that's a big red flag. When you have, a patriot general marry a loyalist, a big, and not just any loyalist, a prominent loyalist. That's a very big red flag. But he was in a big mansion. He was living a very luxurious lifestyle in that mansion. And there's discussion on whether he was stealing money. We don't know whether he was stealing money, but there's discussion that he possibly was stealing money. He had a court-martial. He was found innocent of most of the charges during the court-martial. But Benedict Arnold, the main reason that he betrayed America was for money. That was the main reason he betrayed America, because he thought that he was owed money for his battles in Quebec, because America invaded Quebec during the Revolutionary War, and Benedict Arnold was part of that. Benedict Arnold also helped defeat the British during the Battle of Saratoga. He was, who was the other general during the Battle of Saratoga? I think, was it Gates? But basically what happened during the Battle of Saratoga was, Gates had ordered a retreat, I think it was, and Benedict Arnold refused to retreat, and he pushed on, and he actually flanked the British and forced the surrender. And then what happened was Gates actually took the credit for that, and Benedict Arnold got really pissed off about that. So that's that, I guess that factors into one of the reasons he betrayed America. But it was mostly about money. The British were offering him millions of dollars in today's money to surrender West Point. And not only was he going to surrender West Point, he was going to surrender George Washington also. And this is how you know that Benedict Arnold is a complete scumbag. Even though he was pushed around, that is true, he's a complete scumbag and a traitor. And the reason he's a complete scumbag is because when Benedict Arnold betrayed America, he was going to sell out George Washington. George Washington would have been captured and would have been hanged. And guess what? George Washington was one of the few people who defended Benedict Arnold. So even though Benedict Arnold had a bad relationship with a lot of the other generals, George Washington is that general that always had his back and defended him. And George Washington, defended Benedict Arnold. He talked greatly about Benedict Arnold. And Benedict Arnold, is going to screw over the only guy who's been nice to him for money. That shows you what a scumbag Benedict Arnold was. So Benedict Arnold was definitely a complete scumbag. If you want to see he appears in Assassin's Creed 3. In Assassin's Creed 3, Benedict Arnold is appearing in there. But that mission in Assassin's Creed 3 is very historically inaccurate. It's where in Assassin's Creed 3, he's talking to Major John Andre, which he did in real life. Major John Andre was the guy. Oh, wow, look. We all have Jack High Straits. Wow, that's ridiculous. So Major John Andre was the British spy master. He was the British major that he was conspiring with to surrender West Point. And in Assassin's Creed 3, how they basically had it was that John Andre was in a British uniform. And that didn't happen like that in real life. In real life, he was stopped by a group of American soldiers, and those American soldiers were wearing Hessian coats. The Hessians were German mercenaries. So the Americans had killed the German mercenaries and had taken their coats and were wearing their coats. And because American soldiers oftentimes didn't have proper clothing. And so John Andre went up to the Americans in Hessian coats and told them that he's a British officer. He was in civilian clothing. And so he thought they were Hessians, but they were Americans. And so they caught him, they searched him, and in his boots, he had the plans to West Point. And then what happened was Benedict Arnold was told that John Andre had been captured, and so at that point he fled. He got on his ship and he fled. And George Washington had arrived to West Point, and he saw the fort was in such terrible state. George Washington was outraged. He was like, "Why is the fort in such terrible state? Why are all the defenses like gone?" Benedict Arnold specifically weakened the fort just so that it'd be easy to be captured by the British. But Benedict Arnold's a scumbag, like I said, and the thing is he was doing it, he betrayed America primarily for money, but at that time period, there were so many generals that weren't fighting for money. George Washington wasn't fighting for money. All of the other generals weren't fighting for money. There were so many soldiers that weren't fighting for money at that time period. They were fighting for something else, the cause, the revolution, their ideals, their country. So not everything is about money. And the reason that they couldn't pay Benedict Arnold, it's not because they were greedy and they didn't want to pay him. The reason that they couldn't pay Benedict Arnold is because what happened was the British army were counterfeiting American continental dollars. And so they were trying to counterfeit American continental dollars, and so they tried to inflate the currency. The currency was inflated. They printed so much continental dollars so that the American dollar would be useless. That was why. And they were trying to destroy the Patriot economy. And so that's why the Patriots stopped using the money. And the British underestimated American resolve because they thought that if the Americans weren't getting paid, that we would give up. But we weren't, and we kept fighting. Benedict Arnold, on the other hand, is that type of guy where it's like it's about money. He doesn't think about his country, he doesn't think about the cause, and he doesn't think about the people that were loyal to him. George Washington was one of the few guys who were nice to him and actually had his back. And what does he do for George Washington? He tries to have George Washington captured by the British. And if George Washington had gotten captured, he would have been hanged. That would have been it. He would have been executed. So that was just so that's why. So whenever you hear the slang term when Americans call somebody else an Arnold, if you guys ever heard that, that basically is a reference to Benedict Arnold, the greatest American traitor in history, in American history. So that's like a slang term. So if you're called an Arnold, it basically means that you're a traitor. And Benedict Arnold had a very horrible life afterwards. He failed to surrender West Point. The British did promote him to a general, but he failed as being a general. And what happened was the reason the British gave him a general's post, even though he didn't give them West Point, was because if they didn't give him the general's post, nobody else would defect. So it was to show that if you defected, that you wouldn't be charged, and you would be given a proper rank if you were a high officer in the British Army. That's what it was about mostly. And so Benedict Arnold failed, and Benedict Arnold actually moved to Canada after the Revolutionary War. And when he moved to Canada, they hated him. They hated him because he was a patriot general who changed sides, and so they didn't trust him. He fought against the loyalists, and then he went on their side, and so they didn't like him. And then he went back to Britain, and then when he went back to Britain, they hated him too. And the legend about Benedict Arnold says that on his deathbed, he said that he wanted to be buried in an American uniform, and he said, "May God forgive me for putting on another uniform." But we don't know whether that's true or not. That is what the legend says about Benedict Arnold's death. But yeah, Arnold was a traitor. But the most historically accurate depiction of Benedict Arnold, if you want to see one, is in Turn Washington Spies. Turn Washington Spies gets a few things wrong, like when George Washington was having dinner with him right before his escape. That didn't happen. He escaped before George Washington arrived. But for the most part, Turn Washington Spies portrays Benedict Arnold in a pretty accurate way, if you ever want to see like him. But that was about that. Since you don't know who Hardin was, you might want to read up on Gunfighters of the West. I think you'll be fascinated. You do love history. Well, thank you, Ezekiel. I'll definitely read into that. Thank you, man. And thank you, Antonio. I finished All Quiet on the Western Front, and the way the German youth was swayed by serving World War I made me think of Nico quote about GTA 4. Thank you, Antonio. Well, that's what it was. All Quiet on the Western Front. I read that book way before the new movie came out. I saw the 1930s movie, and I saw the 1970s movie. I think the 1930s movie is my favorite one. But it was the All Quiet on the Western Front was an anti-war book. That's what it was set up. It was an anti-war book, and when Nazi Germany came, when Nazi Germany was formed, the Nazis came to power, they banned All Quiet on the Western Front, and they had the book burned. The author also had to flee for his life because it didn't fit the Nazi agenda. The Nazis wanted to conquer. They wanted war, and so a book, All Quiet on the Western Front, talks about how stupid war is and just the horrors of war, and so the Nazis didn't want that, and they banned that book, and Oh, I missed your super chat. I'm sorry, Minded Eagle. Let me see here. What's the next heist do you think Rockstar should do to GTA Online? What update do you think deserves a part 2? A part 2 on GTA Online. I don't, part 2? I don't know. That's a good question. What could deserve a part 2? Maybe Cayo Perico, and instead the submarine takes you to a new destination. Maybe that, new heist location. Do you know about Ned Kelly? Look him up. The infamous Australian outlaw. I know about Ned Kelly. His armor is actually in Reddit Online, in Fool's Gold. You wear his armor. Thank you, Mario. But yes, Ned Kelly was, Benedict Arnold was a traitor. I don't know what you mean. But about Ned Kelly, I'll answer your point in just one moment. There was a guy who asked me earlier, do I think King Louis, when I was talking about the French Revolution, do I think King Louis was a good person? I don't know if he's still here or not. But King Louis was a bad person. He was, I wouldn't say that Louis was evil. I wouldn't say that. But Louis was he was incompetent. He didn't know what he was doing. He shouldn't have been king. And Louis was too friendly with the aristocrats, the rich elites. Louis was too friendly with them. And so he sided way too much with the first and the second estate, which was the church and the rich. He sided with the aristocracy and the church over the poor. And that was like, a big mistake. Louis didn't realize how poor people were, how much people were starving. And Louis also tried to sell out his country. He tried to betray France because he was a constitutional monarch after the revolution, and he tried to flee to Austria with his wife because his wife was related to the Marie Antoinette. She was related to the Austrian royalty. And so the king committed treason. Louis committed treason. He did. When he tried to flee to Austria. And so the thing I don't like is when people see a game like Assassin's Creed Unity, when you see a game like Assassin's Creed Unity and people are like saying like, oh, Louis didn't deserve it, he didn't deserve to get executed, he was like an innocent king and stuff like that. They see the scared guy in the game, but they don't realize how different it was in real life. Of course he's going to be scared. He's about to be executed. But the people that are saying, oh, I feel bad for Louis getting executed or something like that when they play Assassin's Creed, they don't realize the full extent of Louis's terrible policies and how the starvation he caused and he committed treason. When Louis was put on trial, the trial was a show trial. He was going to be found guilty no matter what. There was no chance of him winning that trial. But Louis was guilty of most of the things that they accused him of during the French Revolutionary trial. He was not innocent. So most of the stuff they accused him of, the treason, the corruption, that was true for the most part. Now, do I think Louis deserved to get executed? No, I don't think he should have been executed. But the reason I don't think King Louis should have been executed, I don't think Marie Antoinette should have been executed either. Even though I can't stand I can't stand Louis and I can't stand Marie Antoinette. I think they were both scumbags. But the reason I don't think they should have been executed is for a few reasons. The first one is because when they executed Louis, should have been put instead on house arrest. If I was in charge of the Republican government in France, that's what it was called, the French Republican government. What I would have done in that time period is I would have sentenced Louis to life in prison. Life in prison. That's what it should have been. It was him and his wife, maybe at most house arrest. House arrest, and they should have never been able to touch power again. No power, nothing ever again. The reason it would have been smarter to put them on house arrest instead of executing them is because once they executed them, they had no leverage against the other countries. Because once they executed the royal family, what happened was all the other neighboring countries were invading. Spain, Prussia, Great Britain, Austria, all those countries were invading. If they instead put Louis on house arrest, the French Revolutionary government could have used Louis's arrest as leverage against those countries and prevented those countries from invading, saying we have the king and queen on house arrest right now. But because they executed him, they put the country in more danger because now the country was at the foreign kingdoms were going to invade. And for the people that defend the foreign countries, like they defend like Austria and Prussia and like Great Britain and like Spain for like invading France in that time period, those countries weren't invading Spain. They weren't invading France to help people. They were invading France to put the monarchy back in power. They could care less about the poor. They could care less about the peasantry. It was more to secure their status. And the king and queen of France committed treason when they tried to get Austria to invade. If your leader flees to another country and tries to get another country to invade, then that leader has committed treason. Louis and Marie Antoinette both committed treason when they tried to get the Austrians to invade. And the thing is, if the Austrians had invaded, do you know what the Austrians would have done? The Austrians would have put Marie and Louis back in power, but what they would have done is they would have also taken a chunk of France. They would have taken a chunk of France and be like, this is our payment for helping you get back on the throne, and Louis would have had no choice but to comply with them. So the Austrians were going to take a chunk out of France for that. So I think that Marie Antoinette and Louis were scumbags, but I don't think that they deserve to get executed. It wasn't that I cared about them necessarily, but it was more about that if by killing them, they put them at their country at more risk, because now all the foreign monarchs were going to invade France. That's what it was about. But there's like a lot of people that defend Louis and defend like Marie Antoinette. And Marie Antoinette, you could actually make the argument that Marie Antoinette was actually worse than Louis. You can make that argument, because Marie Antoinette, whenever I see like videos on Marie Antoinette, most of the comments are people defending her. They're saying, oh, she was innocent, you know, she didn't know what she was inexperienced and stuff like that. And most of the comments that I see, people say she became a queen when she was like 14 or 15 years old. You can't blame her. That is true. Marie Antoinette did become a queen when she was 14 or 15 years old, but here's what people aren't telling you. She was like 30-something when she got executed. So she's been queen for like 20-something years at that point. So you're telling me she still doesn't know what she's doing when she's been like, you know, queen for like 20-something years at that point. So that's, Marie Antoinette, there are a few things that people say about her that aren't true. Like, for example, when she said, let them eat cake, that didn't happen. She didn't say, let them eat cake. But what was true was she was throwing lavish parties. So she was throwing lavish parties when the poor were suffering. That was true. She didn't say that let them eat cake quote, but she was throwing parties when the poor were suffering. People will defend Marie Antoinette and they'll say that she donated to charity. It is true. She donates some money to charity, but the people defending her, do you know what they won't tell you? They won't tell you that she had a massive gambling addiction. She had a massive gambling addiction, and what happened was she spent thousands of gold coins in a week. Thousands of gold coins in a week that she'd lose to gambling. And then what she would do is she would borrow money from other lords and then donate that to charities. And so she was gambling with taxpayer money and losing thousands of gold coins. Imagine how much money that's worth. There's hundreds of thousands of dollars that she has to be losing every week just gambling. So she was a gambling addict, but the people defending Marie Antoinette aren't going to tell you that necessarily. But yeah, so, you know, you could argue that Marie Antoinette was even worse than Louis because of her gambling addiction, her lavish lifestyle, and the fact that the whole idea to go to Austria was her idea. She tried to get Austria, she convinced her husband to flee to Austria to get the Austrians to invade. So was Louis and Marie Antoinette, were they innocent? No, they were not innocent. They were guilty of most of the charges. The one thing that Marie Antoinette was not guilty of is when the French Revolution courts, the Republican courts, accused her of molesting her child. That's not true. She didn't do that. That was just an extra thing they threw in there just to make her look even worse. But she was guilty of most of the other things that she was being accused of. So that's the thing about it, is that I think people get too attached to some of these figures in history, like Marie Antoinette and Louis, and they think that they were good people, but they really weren't. And they were, France was better off without them. I'm not saying that they should have been executed, but France was better off without them being in power, is what I'm saying generally. You know, the Reign of Terror was a horrible thing. I'm not defending Robespierre. I talked about Robespierre beforehand, but, you know, the French Revolution happened for a reason. You know, people were poor, they were desperate, the aristocrats were, bankrupting the country. They were extremely corrupt. They were stealing from the country. The poor had nothing. They had no say in government, and that's ultimately what led to the French Revolution. The French Revolution is one of the most important revolutions in Europe, because the French Revolution is basically the foundation of democracy in Western Europe. Let's see what cards we get here, but that's enough saying for the guy. I hope I answered that guy's question who asked me, do I think Louis was a bad person? If you're still here, let me know in the comments, the guy who asked me the question. When is the Chinatown playthrough coming? Pretty excited. It'll be in February. Do you know about Ned Kelly? Look into him. Thank you, Tricky Mario, for the super chat. About Ned Kelly, Ned Kelly was he was the most famous Australian outlaw. He wore the Kelly gang. They wore the armor, and the armor that you see in Reddit Online in Fool's Gold was actually the Ned Kelly armor. And in that time period, the armor actually stopped most bullets. So it did actually protect them from most bullets, and they were almost unstoppable. And how did the police finally stop Ned Kelly? They shot him in the legs. because he didn't have armor in the legs. So that's how they took him down. They aimed for the legs. And when Ned Kelly was hanged, I think Ned Kelly's last words when he was hanged, I think he said something like, eventually this was going to happen anyways, or something like that. He's like, oh, well, this was going to happen anyways, or something like that. That was his final words when he got hanged. But he was the most, famous Australian outlaw. What do I think about the burning in Washington in the War of 1812? Well, the War of 1812 is, I don't think that the War of 1812 is a very complicated subject, because what happens is that there's a few things that they don't tell you about the War of 1812. Now, was the U.S. right to invade Canada in the War of 1812? I don't know. I personally think it was a bad idea. But the thing about that is, from the British perspective and from the Canadian perspective in history, and I'm not even saying this from an American perspective, but I'm just saying this mostly from just a historical perspective. The American and the British and the Canadian perspective is that the U.S. had just were invading Canada. But the American perspective on it, the Americans didn't just invade Canada for no reason. It wasn't just that. Why did the U.S. invade Canada during the War of 1812? It was because of the British impressment of American sailors. Basically, what happened was the Napoleonic Wars were going on in Europe. So this is, Napoleon had come to power after the French Revolution. He originally was the first consul of France. He ended up overthrowing the French government. After he came back from Egypt, he gained more and more power, and he eventually overthrew the government, declared himself emperor. Now, Napoleon was more of a dictator than a monarch, but Napoleon had gone to war with a lot of other countries, because a lot of countries at the time period were starting wars with France because they were scared of France spreading the revolution to other countries. And what ended up happening was Britain was fighting France in the Peninsular Campaign. The Peninsular Campaign was in Spain. So Spain was completely conquered by France. In 1812, Spain was completely occupied by France. And France had actually, the king of Spain was Napoleon's brother. And there was, what happened was the British, a lot of battles were losing against the French. They weren't doing too well in the Peninsular Campaign. They eventually did win, but they weren't doing too well in the Peninsular Campaign. And America at that time period was a neutral nation. France wanted us to be an ally of theirs during the Revolutionary Wars. They wanted us to come over and send troops to help them in the Revolutionary Wars. But we didn't help France. The reason America didn't help France during the Revolutionary Wars, Americans were sympathetic to the French. We were sympathetic to the French Revolution. We sided with the French more than the British during the French Revolutionary Wars. But the reason that we didn't send soldiers to help France was because we were a new nation. We didn't have the resources to send people over to Europe, and also we were scared that if we sent soldiers to help the French, that we might get into wars with other countries, and Spain or Britain or another country could invade us. And so we didn't want that. We had to stay neutral. We wanted to help the French, but the reason we couldn't help the French because we were a new nation. That's why the U.S. didn't help France during the Revolutionary Wars. We wanted to help, but we couldn't militarily. We could try to help with we sent volunteers. There were American volunteers that went to France to help, but we couldn't actually send our actual military because that would put us in danger of invasion to other countries. Now, leading to the War of 1812, the reason that the War of 1812 happened was because what the British were doing is American ships would go to Europe. So even though we were a neutral country, we're not taking sides, American ships would go to Europe. They would go to France, they would go to Britain, they would go to Spain, and they would trade. I'm getting some bad cards, but they would trade. And so I think I had a 7. I just folded on that. Oh, well. But what I was saying is American ships would go into Europe and they would trade. And these American ships that would trade, the French, what they would do is the French would sometimes open fire on our ships because the French were just pissed off that we didn't help them. It was called the Quasi-War. It was an undeclared war of revolutionary France. The British, on the other hand, what they would do is they would board American ships, and they would steal everything that was on the ship, all the cargo, and then what they would do is they would either convert the ship to military use, or they would scuttle the ship, which basically means take it apart for parts, and the Americans that were on the ship, what they would do is they would impress them. What impressing basically meant was they forced all the American sailors into the British Army. So they would just basically kidnap them. So imagine that you're on a ship, you're going over to Europe just to trade some things. Maybe you're going over to like France or Spain. British Navy boards your ship, steals everything on your ship, takes your ship, and then basically drafts you, forces you into the British Army. And so those Americans were then forced into the British Navy, forced onto British ships, helping to load cannons, and also possibly sending them to the front lines to fight in the Peninsular Campaign. And the British argument was that this was not illegal. The British argument was claiming this was very legal what they were doing because they were saying that Americans were British citizens. That's what the British were claiming. They were saying Americans were British citizens, and so they had an obligation to fight for the empire. But no, that argument is stupid because we left the empire. We had a revolution, and so we were not part of we're not British citizens anymore. We're not British subjects. We're Americans. But yet the British didn't see it that way. They said you're still British subjects and you're still British citizens, even though we were in an independent country already. And so they were kidnapping Americans, forcing them into the British Navy, forcing them to fight against the French. Americans didn't want to do that, and Americans got so pissed off about that some Americans even went over to Europe and were helping the French, volunteered in the French army just to fight against the British because of how pissed off they were getting about that. And so James Monroe, he was the president of America at the time. He was telling the British several times, stop that, stop kidnapping American sailors, stop doing that. The British refused to do that, and so he invaded Canada. That's basically what happened. And the American invasion of Canada failed. It was a disaster. And then what happened was the British pushed us all the way down, and they burned the White House. That's basically the whole story of the War of 1812. About the War of 1812 is a lot of people think the British destroyed the Americans in that war. No, that's not true. The British did have really good victories against the Americans, but the Americans had some really good victories against the British as well. It was basically no side won. Like, both sides destroyed each other, really, in the War of 1812. The British's greatest victory is when they pushed us out of Canada, and they took the White House and they burned it. The White House that you see, today, is not the first White House. The first White House was actually burnt down by the British during the War of 1812. The greatest American victory was during the Battle of New Orleans. During New Orleans, the Americans actually destroyed the British army. The British army was advancing towards New Orleans. The Americans destroyed them. So both sides had really good victories in that war. The crazy thing about the Battle of New Orleans is that the war was actually ended. The war ended in a peace treaty. And the news didn't get to the soldiers at that time because you didn't have things like phones, you didn't have things like telegram back then, and so things had to be traveled by horse. And so the battle still happened even though the war was technically over. But the British army had gotten destroyed in the Battle of New Orleans. But that's basically the War of 1812. Now, basically, both sides were at fault in the War of 1812. Do I think the U.S. was right to invade Canada? No. I think it was stupid to do so. I don't think we should have done it. But were the British right also? No, the British were wrong also because they were kidnapping American sailors and just forcing them into the British Navy, and that was wrong too. So they shouldn't have done that. The whole thing could have been avoided if Britain had not, been kidnapping American sailors, but they didn't want to, and they just kept stealing American ships, and they kept forcing Americans to fight into the in the British army. But I wouldn't be surprised if some pissed off American would have blown up the gunpowder storage when they got kidnapped. But that was yeah, I just had a good hand here. But yeah, that was just stupid. Imagine being drafted and kidnapped by a foreign country and being drafted and forced to fight in their war. But that was the whole thing with the War of 1812. It was a disaster. It was a stupid war. Let me see here. Binded Eagle. Hot take. KDJ Sasanta are the worst characters added to GT Online, and I don't know about, but I think the contract could get a part 2. I want to see more modern Franklin and Lamar. Yeah, I would be down for that. I'd be down for a contract part 2. I just want to see more stuff to the business, personally. Thank you, Binded Eagle. Thanks for that super chat. Thank you, Antonio. Do I enjoy alternate history? Valid is a YouTuber who made a video about a Cold War between Soviets versus Allies versus Nazis. Thank you, Antonio. I don't know if I really like the alternate history, because it's really hard to say what would have happened if certain things didn't happen in history. What I said earlier about the French Revolution, if Robespierre didn't kill anybody, he would have gone down as a hero, definitely, because everything that Robespierre did was a good thing until he started killing people. So it was just Robespierre wasn't he wasn't a bad person originally. He made equality for the poor. The poor were equal to the rich. He ended slavery. He reduced the power of the monarchy. He brought about democratic reforms into France. Robespierre generally did a lot of good things when he was younger, but then he went crazy and just started killing people during the Reign of Terror. So if Robespierre didn't kill anybody, he would have been, generally a good person in history, one of the most important people. Well, he still technically was an important person in history, but when we see Robespierre today, we don't think about the good things Robespierre did. Instead, we think about him just executing people with the guillotine, which I guess that is a valid thing to remember him for, because he killed a lot of people with the guillotine. But if he didn't do that, if he didn't do the executions, he would have been a really good leader. So that was Thank you, Drifter Kids. Like the boss's choices as U.S. president in Saints Row 4, for real though. Would you rather end cancer or end world hunger? End cancer or end world hunger? I would if I could choose, would I end cancer or end world hunger? It depends. If this is only like a specific type of cancer, then I'd end world hunger. If it's ending all cancer, everything, I'd end cancer, all of it. And the reason is because ending world hunger would be very difficult to do. I don't know how you would go about doing that. Like how exactly would you go about doing that? Because the thing is though, the problem with ending the problem with world hunger. Do you know what you have to do to end world hunger? One thing that people never talk about to end world hunger. You have to help people get out of poverty. Obviously, that's one reason to end world hunger. But do you know what I think is the number one thing to end world hunger that no one talks about? Corruption. If you to end world hunger, you have to end corruption. That's it. Corruption and world hunger cannot exist together. If you want to end world hunger, you have to end corruption. And there are so many countries, the starving countries, where the governments are so corrupt. They're so corrupt. And even when you make donations to help people, help poor people, like help people that are starving, these governments will just steal stuff. So even when you send charities over to these countries that are meant to help people, these corrupt governments will steal stuff. Like if you look at a lot of these African like warlords, if you send stuff over to help people, the African warlords will steal stuff. There was one charity that I did on my channel called Heart of the Bride, which is a really good charity that does help people in Africa. That one was a really good charity that I did. But there's a risk though that when you send stuff to these countries, these governments could also steal stuff. There is risk of that happening. And I really want to help people, but there's risks that do you know why there's no charity, there's no North Korean charity? Do you know why that? If you look online, you look around for charities, there's almost not one charity that you can find that goes to North Korea. Do you know why? Because the North Korean government steals almost everything that comes in. So whenever any kind of charity money goes in North Korea, North Korean government steals it. It's meant to help people in North Korea, they'll steal it. And even when food comes in, the North Korean government will steal the food and will just sell the food off. So that's why you don't see any North Korean charities, because in Africa, it's a lot easier to deal with the corruption. I guess in Africa, the corruption isn't centralized like it is in North Korea. In Africa, you have the corruption in like warlords and like parts of the government, but there are ways to get around that. And so volunteer organizations can still go into Africa and can still help people that are in need. So charities to Africa are helpful, I would say still. But when you donate to a country like North Korea, if you don't donate anything to North Korea, because if there's any kind of charity that's going to North Korea, the North Korean government will just steal it and just pocket it. So that's why if I was to answer your question, I know it's a long answer. To answer your question, would I end world hunger and cancer? I'd get rid of cancer. Because if we develop like a cure for cancer, we can just get rid of it right away if we had a cure. But to end world hunger is something that's going to take very, very long, and it's going to get very complicated. And to end world hunger, you're going to need regime change. You're going to need to get rid of a lot of these governments, in a lot of these corrupt governments, and nobody wants regime change. You know, we don't we have enough problems already, but like having to get involved in other countries' affairs and also having to get rid of other dictators and stuff like that takes too long, and that's just like people don't want to do that. And so I can understand that also why, and the last time my country, America, tried to do regime change, it was a disaster. Look at Iraq. So that was a really bad idea. So it was so regime change isn't even a solution also. But it's like, what are you going to do exactly? You got to deal with these corrupt governments, but what are you going to do exactly? That's the question. So that's that. Hope I answered that question. It's like, to end world hunger, you got to end corruption. That's what the corruption and world hunger cannot exist together. I'm Canadian, and yes, we won 1812. Canada has never lost a war yet. What learned in school to this day, Canada still hasn't lost. Well, I'm gonna correct you on that, Bester. Thank you. I do appreciate the super chat, but Canada didn't win the War of 1812, but Canada didn't lose either. If you understand what I'm saying, you didn't win and you didn't lose either. My country, America, we didn't win the War of 1812. We didn't lose either. None of the sides won. It ended in a stalemate. That's pretty much what it was. That War of 1812 ended in a peace treaty with no gains really for either side. So it wasn't a defeat for either side. It was just, the war just ended. They signed a peace treaty and it ended hostilities. That was pretty much what it was. So that was just what I'll say about that. Video idea: top 5 worst best updates. I could do that. Binded Eagle, thank you for the super chat. Do I think King George III was a good man? No, I do not. King George was a scumbag. King George III was a scumbag. Now about George is here's the thing is George III is you could actually blame Lord North more. Lord North was actually the Prime Minister of Great Britain. You could blame him more for losing the American colonies. But basically the whole reason the American Revolution happened was it wasn't just about paying taxes. It wasn't just about that. It was like a lot of people think Americans were just pissed off of high taxes and they rebelled. It wasn't just about that. It was like a whole combination of things. Like there's also social aspects to this. Like before the Revolutionary War, Americans were not treated fairly by the British authorities in the colonies. We weren't ever. Now, the British did treat us better than colonists were treated in other countries. Like Spain treated their colonists the worst. Like the Spanish treated their colonies like absolute garbage. The British did not treat Americans good, but it wasn't as bad as the Spanish. The Spanish were the worst. But for example, if you were in that time period, if you were like an American in that time period and you tried to call yourself British, they would say, you're not British, you're a colonist. That's what they would say. And they would say colonist, the colonists. It was like a very disrespectful term, you see? You know, you think of it as just a word as the person who lived in the colonies. But the way the British said it, when they said the colonists, it was a disrespectful term. They never said British subjects, the colonists. And so it was just about that. Is Americans were just pissed off at that. We didn't like things like that. We didn't like being referred to not as we wanted to be called British. We were called the colonists instead. And so that was like that was one of the social reasons for the American Revolution, but it was largely because we were taxed without representation. It was no taxation without representation. That was the whole American saying. And the thing is though is we didn't just in America, we didn't just take up arms and just start revolting. It didn't happen like that. There's a lot of dumb people. They think that Americans just got up one day and just started revolting and got pissed off. That's not how it happened. The American Revolution, we wanted a peaceful revolution. We wanted a peaceful change. We tried to reason with King George, but he didn't listen. Basically, what happened was we sent over a petition. In 1774, we sent a petition to Great Britain. And that petition was asking King George III to grant the colonies representation in the British Parliament. Because the colonies, we were taxed, but we had no say in the British government. We had no say in how we were taxed. We didn't have a seat in the British Parliament. And so we sent a petition over. You can look this up, 1774. This is 1 year before the revolution started. The revolution started in 1775. We sent the petition over, and the British government just completely disregarded the petition. And King George III actually said that anybody who openly declares arms up against Britain is a traitor and will be hanged. That was King George's response. King George wasn't a compassionate monarch. He could have reasoned with the colonists. He could have tried to talk to the colonists. He could have tried to come to the table, try to have a discussion. He didn't want to do that. Instead, King George and Lord North, they wanted to control the colonies without the colonists having a say, and that was it. And there was also a British law. There was a British law. I'm trying to remember what law it was. Somebody in the comments might know it. I forget the track of the law. But there was a British law that specifically said, King George broke his own law. There was a British law that said that a British king cannot bring foreign mercenaries onto British soil. There was a law that said that. I'm trying to remember where this law was. Was it in the... No, it wasn't in the Magna Carta. It was something else. But basically what happened was there was King Charles, not the current King Charles, but there was a King Charles. This was in the 17th century. There was a civil war in Britain in the 17th century. And it was one of the King Charles. I don't know which Charles it was, but it was one of the King Charleses. Basically, he wanted to be an absolute monarchy. And the parliament said, no, we want a constitutional monarchy. Charles rebelled, caused a civil war. The parliament ended up winning the civil war. After the parliament won the civil war, Charles got executed. But during the civil war, Charles brought in mercenaries. He brought in mercenaries from France into Great Britain. Foreign mercenaries that he was paying to fight British people on British soil. So he was paying French mercenaries to fight British people on British soil. And after that, what happened was the British passed a law which said that no British monarch will ever be able to use foreign mercenaries on British soil. King George III violated that law by bringing the Hessians into America. The Hessians were German mercenaries. Those were the German elite soldiers that were in the American Revolution, and they were on the streets in the 13 colonies. Now, the Hessians, The Hessians are technically mercenaries. The leaders are mercenaries. The soldiers weren't really mercenaries. The soldiers were more working for their lord. The lords were the ones who were the mercenaries. The leaders were the mercenaries, but the soldiers were more just hired help by the lords. But that was the Hessians were brought in as mercenaries. And King George III argued that he's not bringing in mercenaries onto British soil because he's saying that's the colonies. That's not technically British soil. So then the American argument is that if it's not British soil, it's not your soil either. And so there was a lot of things, but the Americans tried to reason with King George. They tried to talk to King George. It wasn't that we just took up arms and everything like that. But King George was a scumbag, and it was him and Lord North that caused them to lose America. So they lost America. It was their fault, definitely. The whole American Revolution could have been avoided, and we would have been part of Canada today if they had just given us literally equal representation in Parliament. That's all it was about. But it was Americans were fully justified in rebelling after that point when King George threatened to hang anybody who was so that was what it was. What, Ricky? King George was not a good monarch. Not a good monarch, definitely. I think he was probably a better monarch than Louis was. Louis was the worst in France, but he was not a good monarch either. That's what I would say about King George. That's my final, thing I gotta say about him. Talk a lot of history today, but yeah, that's what I would say about King George. And also is, I'll tell you guys something about King George. King George sent a delegation to America, and France had actually gone onto the American side. France went on the American side, and France was helping the U.S. The reason the French were helping us, France was still a monarchy at the time period. France wasn't helping us because they were sympathetic to the revolution. They were just helping us to hurt Britain. But France entered the war on the American side in the revolution. Spain declared war on Britain. The Dutch declared war on Britain, and Britain had a giant mess at that time. And so at that point, when all the European countries declared war on Britain, Britain was going to lose. It was over. By 1780, 1781, Britain has lost the war. There's no way that they could win the war at that time period. Now, what happened about going forward into this is King George sent a delegation to America. This is like 2 years before the Revolutionary War ended. And the delegation was begging Americans to stop the revolution, begging them. And the British delegation, when they came to America, they said, please, stop fighting us. We will grant you equal representation in Parliament. We will grant you equal representation in Parliament. We will give you everything that you wanted. We will lower your taxes. We will refer to you as British citizens. We will give you equal representation in Parliament. Do you know what the Continental Congress told them? The Continental Congress told them, get the hell out of here. That's what they basically told them. And the thing is, the British called us unreasonable at that point. They said the Americans were being unreasonable. We gave you everything you wanted. Why did you reject it? The reason we rejected it wasn't because we were being unreasonable. The reason we rejected it is because we were fighting a war for several years at that point. So many Americans had died for freedom, for independence. And so we wanted the whole package at that point. We wanted complete independence. We didn't want to even be part of Great Britain at that point. They should have given us that at the start. They should have said at the start, we'll give you full representation in Parliament. We'll give you we'll refer to you as British citizens. We'll lower your taxes. All of that. They should have done that right at the start. If they did that at the start, the revolution would have been, it wouldn't have happened. But because they decided to do that at the end, right when they were losing the revolution, it showed how desperate they were. And so why should the Americans have accepted that deal? They were right to reject it. They said, basically, get the hell out of here. Like, you should have given this to us at the start. Now you're trying to give this to us when you're losing the war. So that's basically what happened in history. So the British would say that point would be say that we were being unreasonable, but no, they were being unreasonable because they were the ones who didn't want to give us all of that stuff early on. But now when they were losing, that's when they decided, okay, we'll give you all this stuff now. Finally, they wanted to force us into submission, and it failed. And then when they're trying to force us into submission failed, they tried to give us what we wanted, but at that point, no. So many Americans had died. We wanted full independence. We wanted to rule our own selves. We wanted to be in charge of our own destiny. And that's basically what had happened. Relations between the U.S. and the U.K. only basically became neutral until after the Civil War during Reconstruction. Well, what I'll say about that is that no, I wouldn't say that. the British government actually kind of supported the Confederacy during the Civil War. A lot of people don't know that. Now it's kind of hypocritical because Britain had actually abolished slavery 30 years before America did, and yet they were supporting the Confederacy more than the North. The reason they were supporting the Confederacy wasn't because of slavery. The reason they were supporting the Confederacy was it was more to weaken America, but it was also because of the it was also the fact that the Confederacy had Britain had gotten most of their cotton from the Confederacy, which had their plantations in the South, and so they didn't want to piss off the Confederacy. So that's why they were more allied with the Confederacy during the Civil War than they were with the Union. That was basically what it was about. But America and Britain didn't normalize relations until World War I. That's really when we finally normalized relations, when we became allies. People don't realize this, but America and Britain actually hated each other for most of their history. We only really became allies a little bit over 100 years ago. So that was just that was after World War I is when we kind of became allies at that point. But we were rivals. Like for example, do you know one thing that the British hated America for is they hated when America did the Monroe Doctrine, which the Monroe Doctrine was basically it was like a law that said that America. It was a doctrine that said America's not going to get involved in European affairs, and Europeans are not to get involved in North American affairs. That was basically what the Monroe Doctrine was, and so a lot of the empire, specifically the British Empire, really didn't like that. But one thing that America did that really pissed off like the British and a lot of the empires is that during the Meiji period in Japan. So if you go to the Meiji period in Japan, that's when Japan was having its civil war and when Japan was modernizing as a country. What happened was, if you look at who are the generals who trained the Japanese army into how to fight modern tactics, because the Japanese were used to mostly samurai, warfare, warfare, bows, swords. The samurai did use guns, sure, at times, but they weren't really used to that modern, way of fighting with weapons and guns. And so Japan had a civil war at that time period. You had the samurai that wanted to keep the old school traditional ways, and then you had the new people, the Emperor Meiji, who wanted to reform and modernize Japan and modernize Japan's military. And who were the foreigners who trained the Japanese army? Americans. It was mostly Americans who trained the Japanese during the Meiji period. The Americans, we helped modernize Japan's military. And we helped Japan modernize its military. And the reason Britain hated when America did that, is because they wanted to colonize Japan. So in that time period, a lot of European monarchs were looking at Japan, and they were looking to colonize Japan. And that's why so many other monarchs, there wasn't really foreign generals like European generals that were going over to train the Japanese, because they were actually planning on conquering Japan. And so in that time period, Japan did have to modernize its army, because if Japan did not modernize its army, it would have been conquered. Like the other France and Britain, they would have invaded Japan and they would have carved it up, just like they did to Africa. So when Japan, because America helped Japan modernize its military, Japan resisted that, and Great Britain and France did not conquer Japan. And so Japan really hated America. Britain really hated America for that they helped train Japan's army and modernize and supplied Japan with guns, because we sold Japan a lot of guns and stuff like that. And to be fair, like I said, Japan did have to modernize its military, because if Japan didn't modernize its military, they would have been conquered. But this does not excuse the invasions. Japan shouldn't have done those invasions. I'm just saying, for their own protection, they should have modernized their military. Unfortunately, though, when Japan modernized its military, later on it decided it wanted its own empire, and so it went on this crazy conquering spree at that point. But that it was right to modernize its military, but it was wrong to invade, all those countries. That was horrible what Japan did later on. But how did Japan repay America for, for helping to modernize its military? Yeah, what they did later on, during World War II. But that's there's a lot of history that you can read about, some, very interesting things. But a lot of people wouldn't know that it was Americans who actually helped revolutionize the Japanese military and helped train the Japanese military. Ned Kelly's final shootout occurred in the northeastern Victorian country town of Glen Rohan, which is located on the Melbourne-Sydney Highway and the Melbourne-Sydney Railway line. Oh, okay. I think that Ned Kelly's guns, you can see them in a museum, though, Mario. Thank you for the super chat. I'm probably gonna get out here, because I did get most of my money back, so I'll probably be. But yeah, I'm sorry if I talk a lot, guys. I like to read. I like to read history a lot, and so I can talk a lot about history, a lot of different subjects. I do people call me a walking encyclopedia a lot of times, but I like to read a lot, and a lot of these different time periods. But yeah, let's see here. What empire is the worst? The worst empire in history
There you are.
Nazi Germany.
What can I do for you?
Hey, your history knowledge is astounding. Thank you, Patrick. Let's see here. They would have been another China, yes. If America did not help industrialize Japan, like America did help. Like, it wasn't all America, to be fair. Like, the Japanese did do a lot of stuff, but we helped train the Japanese military. A lot of Americans went over to Japan, helped train the Japanese military. We sold Japan a lot of guns. We helped Japan industrialize their nation. And so it was that, you know, I don't know if the Japanese, like, really teach that, though, that Americans, like, help them industrialize their nation. But it was that we did help the Japanese a lot, and if we didn't help Japan, Japan would have turned into another China. And what I mean by that is that, literally, Britain, France, and Germany were carving up, like, and Portugal were carving up China at that time period. This is before World War I. And so, if Japan didn't have modernized its military, the exact same thing that happened to China would have happened. Japan would have been conquered, it would have been taken over, it would have been split up into different parts. So, that was that. Thoughts on Hirohito? Hirohito was not a good man. A lot of people think that Hirohito is innocent. Hirohito was not innocent of the charges that he was accused of. You know, a lot of this Hirohito actually, like Unit 731, for example, the Japanese, it was a Japanese chemical, biological weapons, like, place. It was a really horrible place. The Japanese would just kidnap people in China. They would experiment on them. They would use different diseases on people. It was horrible. They would poison Chinese wells. It was horrible. And the Japanese emperor knew about that. He knew about Unit 731, and he did nothing to stop it. Nothing whatsoever. So that shows you the type of person that Hirohito was. Hirohito was not a good man. Hirohito did do the right thing in the end by surrendering because he didn't want his country to be annihilated, but he was not innocent of a lot of the war crimes that he was accused of. He knew these crimes were going on, and what people don't understand is that the shogun who was Tojo. Shogun is the one who has the most military power in Japan at the time in World War II. But if the emperor wanted to, he could have stopped a lot of this stuff from happening. Emperor wasn't just a ceremonial role. Emperor had a lot of power. The emperor could have stopped a lot of the atrocities. The emperor could have stopped the mass killings that Japan was doing. The emperor could have stopped how Japan was treating the prisoners of war, how horrible they were treating them. The emperor did nothing to stop that. Nothing. Did he improve the conditions of the prisoners of war? No. Did he stop the atrocities that Japan was committing in all these countries they were invading, like China? No, he didn't stop that. So Hirohito was very much not, he wasn't innocent by any means. But what I will say about Hirohito is it's good that we didn't execute him, because even though he wasn't guilty, we had to keep him alive. And the reason we had to keep him alive is because Hirohito was seen almost like a god in Japan. He was seen as a god. The emperor was, like, you know, seen as, like, you know, big holy figure. And if I was to compare Japan in that time period to any country today, it would be North Korea. Japan in that time period was very similar to North Korea today. The only difference is that Japan wasn't starving for the most part. The Japanese weren't starving during their empire, but the North Koreans are. But basically what I mean is that, like North Korea, is that they see their leader as like a god, like the North Koreans do today. And so if America put the emperor on trial and they had him executed, that would have been endless riots in Japan. It would have been endless civil war, endless riots. America would have never been able to get the country under control. And so we had to keep him alive. Even though Hirohito was a bad guy, he was guilty of what he did, we couldn't imprison him and we couldn't kill him either, because if we did so, it would be endless civil war. The best thing that we could have done is what we did. The best thing is to get Hirohito to stop and get him to tell his people to stop and surrender. That was only the best thing that we could do. Is because if Hirohito tells Japan to surrender, Japan is going to listen. Like, the thing is about it is that when Hirohito told Japan to stand down, Japan stood down. We didn't have civil wars in Japan, and we didn't have the Japanese fighting us when we arrived in Japan. They didn't fight us, and that was because Hirohito told them to stand down. You know, the Japanese aren't brainwashed today like they were back then, but back then we needed to keep Hirohito alive, because even though, yes, he was a horrible person, he was guilty of a lot of the stuff he did, if we killed him, it would have been a lot worse, and Japan would have just been in endless civil war, and so that would have killed a lot more people. And so, unfortunately, we had to keep him alive. We had to, because there was really no choice. Let me see here. Weren't the women and girls captured turned? Yes, that's very horrible. It did happen. It was very common in China, Mario. Let me see here.
Does
does seem strange to me that they'd need so many guards.
Can you tell us a full story about R. Kelly?
Must be something else
Wait,
going
what?
on there.
Oh, well, yeah, like these celebrities that you mentioned are massive creeps. I don't wanna talk about these guys. What's my favorite World War II movie? Very good question. My favorite World War II movie, what would it be? Can I, does a TV show count? I would say Band of Brothers in the Pacific. That was my favorite one. If it was a single movie, it'd probably be Saving Private Ryan. It's okay, Mr. Waifu. Any accurate history documentaries and movies you'd recommend? Any accurate history documentaries that I would recommend? Let me think. History Channel has a lot of good stuff. Like History Channel, if you go on they have a revolution. They have a series in the Revolutionary War that you can watch for free on their YouTube channel. Just recently, I saw the Kentucky episode. I would recommend that one. When's the next current event video? Might have one tomorrow. Super Mario.
Jacob Worth is a friend of mine. I admire him, but he's just about the worst poker player in all of.
Have you seen a History Matters video on Mongolia asking the USSR to annex it many times? Yes. The reason that the USSR didn't want to annex Mongolia was because it would cause a lot of problems for the USSR. They don't speak the same language, but also because of the fact that Mongolia borders China, and even though the Soviet Union bordered China, they would have an even greater border with China. And the Soviet Union and China didn't like each other, even though they're both communist countries. They hated each other, and so the Soviet Union could get anything they wanted out of Mongolia anyways. Mongolia would do whatever they wanted, and so there was really no need to annex them. So that's ultimately why they didn't want to annex the Mongolia. I thought you were from Queens. I was born in Brooklyn, but raised mostly in Queens. What is the worst Call of Duty game I ever played? Black Ops 3. Barely played it. I couldn't play anymore. Well, Ghosts was good for the single player. The multiplayer kind of sucked, but single player was good. That's crazy because it's rare that a country asks another country to annex it. But do you know what's more rarer than another one country asking another country to annex it? What's more rarer than that is when a country kicks another country out of its country. That's the most rare. That's what happened to Singapore. Malaysia kicked Singapore out of their country. That's how Singapore became a country, because Malaysia kicked them out. It's the weirdest way to become a country. Most governments try to stop countries from leaving, but Malaysia kicked Singapore out. Yeah, I actually have a video, speaking of it, I have a video on Singapore. Who's that at the window? But I have a video on Singapore, on Singapore coming up, in like 30 minutes, actually. So I'm gonna upload the next part of Medal of Honor Rising Sun. If you guys like me talking about history, watch my next part of Medal of Honor Rising Sun. I talk about the fall of Singapore, which is there's a Singapore mission in Medal of Honor Rising Sun. So that's, I talk about that. So, do you ever use the extra buttons on your $200 controller? Yes, I do. So you see right here, I'm doing it right now. So I programmed the left and the back buttons. I programmed it as L1, so I can just scroll to my weapon wheel like this, and R1. So L1 and R1 I have as these buttons back here. That's what I keep as that. What did they do to deserve it? The reason I'm gonna, and this will be the last historical thing I answer, man. I talk so many historical events today. The reason that Malaysia kicked Singapore out of their country was because Singapore was mostly controlled by Singaporean Chinese, and Malaysia was controlled mostly by the Malaysians. And what happened was there was massive religious differences. Religion played a huge part in this, and so both the Singaporeans had a very different view than the Malaysians did. And so there was a lot of Singaporeans. And so the Malaysians basically thought that if there was an election, the Singaporeans might be able to sway the election. And so they, what the Malaysians did was they kicked them out of the country because of that. And what happened was Malaysia actually thought that Singapore would eventually request to join back, and they would join back on their terms, giving them less power. But what happened was that never happened, and instead Singapore became much richer than Malaysia, and is actually one of the richest countries in the world today. So I think that I think Malaysia regrets kicking Singapore out. But Singapore is one of the rich. I think Singapore even has higher living standards than America does. So that's like so it has higher standards of living for the average Singaporean than the average American. Oh, the Malay people. Okay, so I'm sorry if I said Malaysian, then the Malay people. But I guess I'll be wrapping this up here, guys. I hope you guys like my streams and like my commentary. People ask me, kind of weird. People asking me a lot of different historical events, but I'll still answer. Only thing I won't answer is politics. I stay away from that. It's a mess. But I will, historical events people ask me, I'll typically answer.
For the love of God.
But I guess we'll be wrapping it up here, guys. Thank you guys for watching. If you guys enjoyed the stream, drop a like. If you guys enjoyed the stream, it does help me out a lot. Thank you everybody for watching. Thank you everybody who donated also on the stream. I do really appreciate it a lot. Thank you guys for hanging out with me, and I hope that you guys have a great weekend. If you want, in like 30 minutes to an hour, check out my next part of Medal of Honor. It'll be up tonight if you guys want to watch it. Thank you guys for watching. I'll see you guys on the next one. Take care, everyone. Have a wonderful day, guys.